Cody, are you all set? Great. So, good evening. The meeting of the Coventry Town Council will now come to order at 6:01 PM. Roll call, Ms. Ludwig,
Here.
Mrs. Shockley,
Here.
Mr. LeBlanc,
Here.
Mrs. Lima,
Here.
Mrs. Dickson here. May I have a motion to adjourn into executive session for the following at 6:01? Closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42465A2, sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, specifically to discuss the status of the Center of New England receivership matters, captioned as Nicholas E. Cambio trustee and others versus Commerce Park Realty LLC and others, PM 13-0350, and the receiver for Commerce Park Realty LLC and others versus Commerce Park Management LLC PB 13-5001 with the town solicitor, and closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A1, discussions of job performance, character, physical, or mental health of a person or persons, specifically for the council to discuss candidates for the following board openings, Parks and Recreation Commissions. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Roll call. Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Dickson, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Members of the public, we will resume in public session at 6:45 PM. Thank you. Yes. Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Dickson, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. May I have a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call. Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Dickson, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Members of the public, the town council met in executive session to discuss the following. Closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42465A2, sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, specifically to discuss the status of the Center of New England receivership matters captioned as Nicholas E. Cambio, trustee and others, versus Commerce Park Realty LLC and others, PM 13-0350, and the receiver for Commerce Park Realty LLC and others versus Commerce Park Management LLC, PB 13-5001, with the town solicitor. The council also met to discuss the following: and closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A1, discussions of job performance, character, physical, or mental health of a person or persons, specifically for the council to discuss candidates for the following board openings, Parks and Recreation Commission. In relationship to the first item, the discussion took place, no votes were taken. In relationship to the second item, specifically about the opening on the Parks and Recreation Commission, a discussion took place. A vote will take place in public session on March 28th, 2022. Ms. Ludwig, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, provide the emergency evacuation plan?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated.
The emergency exit is behind our public audience and in front of the council.
Thank you. May I have a motion from a member of the council to postpone a discussion of G1 Human Resources Department budget until March 28th?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Mr. LeBlanc? Roll call vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mrs. Dickson, yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. Yes, good. I want you to be on your toes, and you weren't. Okay. That was it. Agenda C2. President Dickson updates, reference pages 4 to 6. I just want to mention that Earth Day, the Department of Public Works has organized an Earth Day cleanup from 9 a.m. to noon on Saturday, April 23rd. Registration, coffee, donuts will be available at the DPW office at 8:45. And at noon, participants are invited back to DPW office for pizza. Last year, I participated with my husband, and I am looking for a new partner to do a section of Flat River Road with me. I go down Flat River Road every day, and it's a mess. And I'm targeting that area, especially near the waterway, to pick up all those nip bottles. I think I can turn them in and get a little cash. I'll help with the budget this year. And anyone who wants to help with earth cleanup, please let us know. And if you want to form a team, contact Michelle at DPW for registration, information, gloves, safety vests, and bags. And you can call her at 822-9110. Another good thing for our town is Eco Depot. The state runs several Eco Depot sites, and we will be having one in Coventry on Saturday, April 9th, 2022, at the Town Hall Annex parking lot, 1675 Flat River Road. And there will be 19 sites open in 2022. Our site, Coventry, will be open April 9th, 2022. I know Mr. LeBlanc and I have already signed up for an appointment, and we have an appointment very early in the morning. And so if you want to sign up for an appointment, you can bring household hazards, up to 2 boxes of paper for free shredding, paint, medical shops, et cetera. It's a very good opportunity to get rid of all these products in one easy disposal area. So go to www.rirrc.org and you can easily sign up. Next thing, yard waste. Coventry Public Works will pick up yard waste curbside starting in April. place your yard waste in separate paper bags. Yard waste may also be brought to the transfer station at any time of the year. And the last item is the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. The Town Council approved the hiring of a consultant to develop a comprehensive plan. The town is also forming a Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. It will have its first meeting with the consultant on Tuesday, March 22nd, from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Coventry Resource Center on Wood Street. At the meeting, the committee will meet each other, talk to the consultant, and organize. We have 8 firm commitments from people. We would like more people, especially people who represent districts 2, 3, 4, and 5. So come join us on March 22nd for a meeting, get to meet your neighbors, and enjoy a light supper. Mr. Crossman, the Director of Planning, has laid out the work of the committee, basically to engage with residents, staff, and consultants over the next 18 months to build a plan for the future of the community and what it needs to become a great community over the next 10 years. We are looking for representatives from all areas of the community, so please consider joining us. Even if you have not formally submitted an application to be on the committee, please do just join us and we'll talk to you at the meeting. So it's 5 to 7 tomorrow evening at the Community Center on Wood Street. We're looking forward to meeting you all. Next, Agenda D1, resolution to appoint Russ Pelletier as a full member of the Coventry Zoning Board of Review to fill an unexpired term of office expiring May 31st, 2026. This is reference pages number 7. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call. Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Dickson? Yes. 5 yeas, no nays. Thank you. The motion passes. And I note that Mr. Pelletier is in the audience. Would you like to stand, please, Mr. Pelletier? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're very happy to have you join us on the Coventry Zoning Board of Review. We were looking for some good people and we're satisfied that we got a great person. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, Agenda D7, appointment of Ken Goodwin as a communications contact person on behalf of the Town of Coventry pursuant to paragraph 8 of the lease agreement between the town and Quidnick Reservoir Company dated January 1st, 2009, which was assigned to Social Holdings LLC as recorded on March 3rd, 2020. May I have a motion to appoint Mr. Goodwin?
I make a motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Discussion, please.
Oh, excuse me.
Are we sure that Mr. Goodwin wants this position? No, because he's not here tonight. I was going to ask him if he was here.
Mr. D'Agostino has spoken to him. He wants the position, but I'll let Mr. D'Agostino speak.
Yes, Councilor, I spoke with him last week, indicated that it would be on an agenda item. He had no problem with that.
Perfect.
And he's familiar with the role.
Oh, yeah. He's done it for many years. Okay. I just want to make sure he still wanted it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Excellent. Thank you for that question, Mr. LeBlanc.
Sure.
Roll call. Any other questions from members of the council? Okay. Roll call vote. Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mrs. Shockley?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon? Yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion passes. The next item is Agenda E, joint meeting of the Town Council and the Coventry School Committee. Welcome members of the committee, Superintendent Levis. Let me see, Mr. Sands. We have Mr. Cowett. Hello. We have Ms. Angeloni here, and we have Mr. Laverna. Thank you for joining us this evening. Chairperson Patno, please open your meeting and do a roll call.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to call our meeting to order at 6:57. And Mrs. Colonian, are you
Here.
present? Mr. Pearson?
Here.
Catherine Patnote here. Mr. Levis is here. Howard and Mr. Sands. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The Town Council did receive a copy of the budget presentation. It was delivered to us starting on Friday evening. And we all, just to let the members of the public know that we did receive this binder with the budget. And we also did receive this evening a copy of the budget presentation, which I believe Mr. Levis is going to be presenting. Is that correct? Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Levis, are you ready to begin?
I'm ready. If I can share my screen now. So I don't know if it's obviously council and school committee's decision, but if I can go through the slides, I believe there's 13 of them, and then you can answer any questions. And I have Mr. Sands, Mr. DeVerna, Mr. Coward, and Mrs. Anzalone with me to answer any questions. So the focus of our budget, we've had between meeting with the council and just our regular budget hearings and discussions, we've had, I believe, 7 public budget workshops where the public could have input, where we've discussed the budget as a committee. Also with, we had one other meeting with the council. So our focus is pretty simple. We're trying to maintain the level of services coming out of a pandemic. We want to make sure that we can continue to provide the supports necessary. Last year, we had added, or this current year, we had modified the middle school schedule to provide more time for students in their courses. We also added interventionists. That was a big, that took us over 2 years to do that. You know, we added custodians, we added other interventionists across the district to provide so that every elementary school had a math interventionist. And we had obviously custodians in our nurses that we had provided a couple of roving nurses just to cover because during the pandemic, you know, it's impossible to keep school open if we didn't have a nurse. And we ended up using those roving nurses really to cover. We need to continue to address learning loss. You've heard about that, you know, and also social emotional, you know, because of distance learning. And you know, while I believe we did the best we could in hindsight and in reflecting, I think we all believe that, you know, there's nothing that compares to having a teacher in front of students. And so I'll show something later on that it shows the work we've done at the elementary school where we've almost closed that gap, and we're proud of that work. And we think that'll continue with our middle school and high school, some of the work we're doing. We want to work with the council to address, you know, the capital needs. I mentioned Dr. Dickson, and I also mentioned Ms. Patno in the school committee. I will be reaching out over the next couple of days, trying to get some dates where we can, you know, outside of our meetings. And I know you guys meet often, and I know, you know, time is precious, but I think it's important for the school committee and the council to come together. And I believe there's some things that we need resolution to move forward, both in terms, and I'll talk a little bit later about finances, but also the bond process and moving forward. You know, and I know often I watch council meetings. I'm here where, you know, we want things to be memorialized. I hear council members bring things up publicly, even though you know the information. And I think it's important for us to move forward. I'm only the superintendent. I can't speak for all the school committee or the council, but I think it's important for us to have a meeting where we can, you know, move forward and truly work together, you know, and to address the needs of not only the school department, but recognizing that we are the largest department in the town. You know, the way we go, I think the town goes, and we want to make sure that we're doing what we need to do to support all the town programs. So I'll be reaching out with like I said, Dr. Dickson and Miss Patno over the next couple of days, trying to work on some dates. And then we want to continue to expand opportunities for students at all levels. We've added for next year girls lacrosse at the high school. And you know the story we've had in cutting sports and, you know, only be able to fund certain after-school programs. We pride ourselves in being a comprehensive district. And so we want to make sure that we continue to support the programs we have and provide those opportunities. So this is the budget that was approved by the school committee. We're continuing, we know the budget cycle and the process, but we are continuing to try to reduce our ask. But this was what was approved. And so we're presenting to you the approved budget of February 17th. We're still looking at enrollment. And every year we make decisions on elementary school. We make conservative decisions, which means if we think that as of April and May, our K enrollment, like one year, I think we eliminated 4 kindergarten or 3 kindergarten positions. Now, during the summer, we had to add those positions back, and we lost really good teachers because we laid them off. But I think we have to be fiscally responsible. We're doing the same process. We met with the high school. I think we're going to try to, we look at all the requests, enrollment, and at the end of the day, some years we've had to add positions. I think this year we're going to be able to reduce a few positions. We should know that by Friday. But those things also change in terms of enrollment. We're coming off a pandemic year. Our homeschool, the last couple of years has been, typically it's about 120 to 140. We have a lot of faith-based organizations. The last 2 years, we've been somewhere between 180 and 200, right, due to the pandemic. So we don't know if we'll see some people come back next year. But that's been kind of an anomaly the last couple of years. So one thing that I wanted to point out, and Ms. Mills had reached out to me and that there was a conversation that took place on the 28th about use of fund balance. And there was a discussion that said we wouldn't put the use of fund balance as a revenue, but we would identify it somewhere down below as an expenditure. And I'd reached out. I know Mr. Sands had, and again, I wasn't part of that conversation, but I did tell Ms. Mills I was going to bring that up, and obviously, feel free to try to expand that. But I talked to our legal counsel, and I talked to other school districts. We've seen that they do use use of fund balance. There's a UCOA code, and they've used it specifically. I think it was Cranston and Cumberland. I also spoke to former finance director I worked with, who's also the RIASBO executive director. So I wasn't comfortable not, and this is what the school committee had approved. I wasn't comfortable taking it off. But again, that's open to further discussion and clarification, because I think if we really want to be transparent, then we should say this is what we're using. It's been in previous budgets. So I put it back in on this slide. But again, I like I said, afterwards, I'll defer to Ms. Mills and the explanation. And I can have an offline meeting too about that. But I wanted to be completely transparent about that. So you can see that this we're asking for the 3.95%, but it also doesn't include the maintenance funding requirement. I know this isn't part of the agenda, but we are going to meet the maintenance requirement this year. I know that was something that there was a discussion we had. And we have work that's being done that we will be invoiced. It should be finished in April. It's HVAC work that we were supposed to have done last year, but because of supply chain issues. So just so you know, we had committed to doing that. We will meet the requirement. I know Ms. Patno has said to me several times to make sure we meet that requirement. So we will be meeting that requirement. However, in this budget, it was down to 1.2 something, but as I added 200,000 back in fund balance, it's $1,300,310.
Mr. Levis, just to
Yes.
make sure I understand, the $1.3 million is not part of your
It's separate.
increase to your budget.
Correct. Well, we're asking for maintenance separately. I know there were conversations where we've been, where the council has said they would help, make sure we met the maintenance requirement, but we can't, I think we did on our first presentation, first time we came to the council, we showed what it would look like by adding that in there. It was like a 9% increase, I believe. At the time, we were asking for 5%, but it would still be well above what we could ask in terms of, we can only ask for 4%. You can only levy 4%. So, but yes, that's above and beyond the 3.95.
So would that be something you'd want to have happen annually? Because once it's not in your budget, it's kind of not in your budget.
Well, I mean, I don't see how it can be put in our budget if based on, Piva Weed 3050. I don't see how we could, ideally it would be right. But, not with what we're presenting now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Levis, later in your presentation, you said that somehow you would put in this maintenance funding requirement, MMR, I believe it's called, but could you address how you're going to get this money?
I'm asking you that. I don't know how we're going to get that. I'm asking the council for that outside. I mean, there were conversations where council members had said, we will, and I'm sure we can go back and find that. So, yeah, we're looking for the council's support. Like I said, for that.
So when you say council support, meaning the council would give you that money
Yes,
above and beyond what's required in the budget?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I think when Mr. Murray, and I know he's not part anymore, but he had stated that at one of the presentations when he gave an update to the council for the, for the necessity of school construction process. So these are some budgetary assumptions that current budgetary assumptions. We've talked about the governor's budget. It still has to be approved by the legislator, but originally, if you remember, we were reduced by over $700,000. This, they say level funding, but it actually gives us $4,000, a little over $4,000 more over the 22 budget. Again, we're asking for in this 3.95, but even today we met and there were discussions that took place around positions. So we will be coming back to the school committee to vote on a budget, and we believe that we'll be able to reduce that 3.95. These are projections, revenues from tuition or Medicaid revenues, but that can fluctuate. But as it stands right now, again, the cell tower revenue, I put an asterisk there. There was the other night at a meeting, there was a comment that wasn't the appropriation, but if you look at the budgets that were approved, and if you look at the past audits, the cell phone tower was listed there as revenue. So again, I'm not an accountant or a CPA, but it's something that we had worked out with previous administrations that had always been given. In fact, there was a time when I think when Ms. Mangiarelli first came on board, we were told that we were given a certain amount of money because that's all we asked for, right? And so when that was stated, Ms. Mangiarelli said, and it was Mr. Tebow at the time, how much are we getting? We asked for that amount of money because there was a pot of money that was cell phone tower revenue that went into a pot and it was spent down by a previous council. So that was a history that was shared with us. And again, I know that there was a conversation, I believe, on the 28th and said that it'll be given to us. But, I just want to say we spent several months to get us where I think we should have just started. And I know the council's aware of that in your conversations with my finance department. So I'm hoping we truly can move on from some of these issues. And again, I put in the use of fund balance will include $200,000 for school lunch. Now, right now, we're actually showing a positive revenue with the school lunch for the first time in, 8-9 years. But we're concerned about next year. And that's why we've still included this, because while that revenue is this year, it has a lot to do with free and reduced lunch and how all students are getting lunches. And that's going to change. It's going to end at a certain time unless it's extended by the federal government. So we are, expecting to have positive balance in our food service, which is, again, like I said, the first time, which will allow us to, if we need equipment, freezers, even cafeteria tables, if you've been in and seen the shape of some of ours. So that's a very positive. But again, the reason why we're saying that we plan on using fund balance for next year is because we're not sure that we'll be working under the same conditions. In fact, it's supposed to end. But again, hopefully, the federal government could extend it. So just to clarify that. So our salaries, again, and this is same information I think we had shared before, but I wanted to reiterate Salaries include step raises and the contractual raises for all employees. Right now, retirements and replacement hires, we project will save $171,000. That's based on 6 retirees, but that could increase. We believe that could increase by several other individuals. So that should help us with savings, but it's not a done deal till we get the letter that says they're officially retiring. And so what they do is they send in letters of intent, and that allows them to receive actually their severance, whatever they're due, within the year. If they don't send that letter of intent to retire by a certain date, and I believe it's December 15th, then they'd have to wait for the severance another year. So there's always a chance that, the people that sent that letter in, sometimes people send it in 1, 2, 3 years ahead. So we won't know, but we should know fairly soon how many. So I'm expecting that number to go up, which is a positive. They'll have greater savings. So staff requests from principals and directors are being reviewed. There was a review take. And just, this $861,000 is not in the budget. We know that if we're going to put more positions in, we're going to have to make that work on our end. And first things was we're meeting to make sure that these positions are truly something that they need. And today there was a meeting, and I think from that number, we've already reduced that number of asks by about $300,000 just on a meeting that took place today. But we discussed that with the school committee that, again, we're looking at other areas. And, in the performance audit talked about, enrollment. And we do that continuously, especially, like I said, we make conservative decisions, which, it's not really good in terms of our staffing, because we end up losing a lot of good teachers that we end up notifying that they're going to be laid off. And over the summer, especially during these times, it'll be easy for a lot of those individuals to get jobs. But we also know we have to do that to be fiscally responsible. Our benefits and health, I think last time we projected 7%. This is we're projected, and I think it's we're pretty guaranteed that it's going to be 5%, which I think is good because last year we didn't have an increase. And so if you look at the last 2 years, it's been like a 2.5% increase. Overall, I think that's pretty, that says a lot about our usage. So that's a very positive. Purchase services, we increased by 3%. And that has to do with our transportation contract and out of district tuition. That's something we monitor continuously also. A lot of times we don't have a control over that. We've talked before about ESSER with students that are like foster or DCYF. They may move into our district or they may move out of district. And we have some shared responsibility with those. So that's always, and the same thing with a special education student. You never know, but we make sure, and I think we pride ourselves on making sure students get what they require. And it's no fault of anybody if a student moves in and that student, it's required $100,000. We have a student that moved in that was residential, now residential. We end up taking that up, but it's not, it shouldn't be viewed as a problem, something we deal with, but those situations happen. But the same happen, the opposite happens. Sometimes we have students that are very costly that move out of district too. So that's always kind of a wild card. We've talked a lot as a committee and as a district about how we've used our ESSER funds to offset appropriations that would fall on our local taxpayers. I think one of the things that we talked about was Chromebooks, that we purchased Chromebooks instead of leasing them. We purchased them outright, and that helps us reduce the budget by $432,000 for this year. I think the purchase was about almost $1 million, $900 and some odd thousand dollars. So that'll also help us next year too, when we would have had to carry that lease payment. Energy was reduced by $200,000 due to contract for natural gas and electricity. And we may even see, obviously it's, because the costs are going up, but locking in at the prices we did, we may have a greater savings. It's like cost avoidance. But and next year also, not this year, but next year's budget, we will start to see the impact of our virtual net metering for 25 years. And I think it's about $11 million saving over 25 years that we'll save on electric costs. That's not in this budget, but just, that's coming next year. Another key component is we spent approximately $1 million. So we will spend, we have to get reimbursed, but of our American Recovery Plan used for curriculum materials. These are materials, we need to constantly upgrade our curriculum. The Department of Ed came out with a process to make sure that our curriculums were what they were called high quality curriculum. And we worked with the Department of Ed and an organization, Ed Reports, and identified that while some of the curriculum materials we bought years ago, we thought were high quality at the time, we found out that they didn't meet the mark. And we've now purchased at a couple of school committee meetings, we've got approval to look at all levels. So we're not just focusing on struggling learners, but we're focusing on major core curriculum for language arts and math. That again, the district would have to make that part of our budget. But we're also focusing on AP. We buy the textbooks, but there's a lot of supporting materials that our teachers that provide AP courses have to create. And so we're also supporting that. I'd mentioned before, I don't know if I mentioned the council, but we're going to get a program, part of our computer science CTE program. It's called Ethical Hackers Training. And it's from the international organization called e-commerce that provides it's like the gold standard. And we're going to offer that training to our students at our high school next year. And when they graduate high school, they'll be able to go, they can go to college, but they're going to be able to, with this certification, go into corporations and work in cybersecurity. It's an entry-level certification. And, right now we work closely with a company where the Envision Technology, both the president and one of their senior architects live in Coventry. They were the ones that helped us do the ransomware attack. And, they're mentioning there's 4.5 million, 4,500,000 cybersecurity jobs available in the world. And in the United States alone, there's about 400,000. So again, these students, in my understanding, they could leave high school and make approximately $60,000 to start. So we're going to be the only high school in the state that offers that program. So we'll, be funding that. It's a cost of about $75 a student, but I'll be going back to the committee to use our ESSER funds to fund that. So that's something that, again, using these funds, I think strategically, because these are funds that we would have to incorporate in our budget, but we're able to do these purchases using ESSER funds. We increased approximately 3% for replacement of our maintenance vehicles. And, thanks to the town that did the enterprise loans and agreements, we were able to do that for 2 trucks. But, you've heard the complaints about, Oak Haven and, the junk there. We are getting rid of it. I met, I want to thank Ms. Lima had reached out about that, just that whole area, that property. And, our new facility director, Russ Hill, is working with Mr. McGee, but we're going to make it, they're going to beautify, if that's a word. Is that the word? Beautify, bien. So they're going to try to make it more attractive, but we're going to get rid of all the scrap there. And that scrap are still we took 2 vehicles off the road because we were able to get those 2 other vehicles, but that's what we had to plow with. So we're going to try to continue with that so that we can continue to do what the town's been doing in terms of their fleet. So this is just, these are the positions that our schools had asked for that are not part of the budget. So again, we're not coming forward saying we're going to increase the budget by this amount. If we're going to make any of these positions happen, we're going to have to find that within our budget, which means see where we can eliminate positions. But you'll have this is the justification. But you can see too, you look at the salary component, but look at the benefits, right? So I think you see that on the town side too, is that the cost of employees. I know when I first started teaching, or no, actually not teaching, when I started as an administrator, like 2002, 2003, I didn't pay a penny for benefits. They were just given. And you look at how benefits have dictated labor market and just the cost of personnel. So, but I just wanted to show you this is what the schools have asked for and why.
Mr. Levis?
Yes.
Can I just ask, I've been having trouble looking at these positions and salaries and kind of wrapping my head around them. So a school psychologist gets $47,000 and then the school pays $33,000 of his or her benefits.
It depends, right?
So when you look at someone's $80,000 salary, that's really just what we should look at, right? Like this is what this person is getting for pay, their gross pay.
Well, benefits depend on, like, for instance, if somebody has a single plan, right, versus a family plan. So we broke it down by
But we don't
salary.
pay people differently based on that.
Well,
Like if you come in as a
but
teacher,
it depends on their step also, right? So we don't,
Yeah.
we have 10 steps. So we're looking at, we could have a halftime person, and by making them whole, that's what this is going to cost.
it just, looking at the salary, some of them just didn't make sense. It just threw me that, there's this one TA who has $58,000 in benefits. And then you have these two half TAs that for some reason only have $2,000 in benefits. So not that you have to break it down for us by the dollar. It just,
Right.
because you
So-
did, it doesn't make any
Right.
sense.
So
to me.
some people, so for teaching assistants, if they get to a certain level, like they're not getting benefits, but after 20 hours to get they're provided benefits. So, and we can, again, I wanted to show you, basically not so much in the weeds in terms of, but I wanted to show you that outside of the budget, what we voted, what the school agreement is voted on, these are additional requests. Just in case I fell asleep, sorry. It was a joke. Guess it didn't go over well.
Ding, ding, ding.
Didn't go over well. One and done.
Can I ask one more question?
You
too?
can ask me anything you want.
So I noticed in the guidance counselor, it says description of need. Coventry High School currently has 0.6 guidance counselor that works every other day. So I'm just trying to conceptualize this. So there's a guidance counselor who only works, I don't know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the whole high school?
No, we have, this is one position.
Extras. Okay.
This is a position that we're trying to increase, that they want to increase.
Okay, so this
These are
didn't
just-
make it into the budget that you're presenting now, but these were positions that you had discussed.
Well, yes. They're discussed, they're ongoing discussions, because we want to make sure that, there definitely is a need.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yes, but I wanted to be clear that we're not asking, if we make any of these positions, if we recognize or deem that they're necessary, we have to make it work within our budget. Like we're not saying we're asking you for this, and then on top of this, this is what are needed. This is our responsibility. That was asked, I think, Mr. Pearson. Again, I don't want to put words in someone's mouth, but I think that question was asked when we presented this to the school committee. And then I guaranteed we're not coming back asking for more. Our goal is to come back and reduce the budget.
Okay, thank
So-
you.
Do you have a question, Mrs. Lena?
But I think you mentioned back on the previous slide, Mr. Levis, for that bullet about this amount, that you would already work to cull this down a bit. I think
Yes,
yeah.
But I don't want to, yes, definitely. And there's more work to be done. I mean, we had, last year, remember, it was well over $1 million. And, we identified to put in a new schedule at the middle school. We met numerous times over 2 years, but we recognized we were going to need additional positions to make the schedule work. And that's what we put into the budget. However, there were a lot of other positions that are asked for. And sometimes it's, well, they have it, why don't we? But it's because it's based on need, right? And that's what we look at, need. And we do consider, like I said, enrollment and we've made decisions about eliminating this position, putting this position in place. And then a couple of years later, school says, well, we really need this. But I said, you wanted to eliminate this position and put in this position. So I think we hold people accountable, and it isn't just a wish list. We never want wish. Years ago, when people were doing budgets, the first budget, even in here, I think the budget was like millions of dollars in additional. One year, I think it was like $3 million request. We know we're not going to do that, right? So we wanted to drill down to what is really necessary. And so I think they did a really good job, but we're still working on that. Our goal is to reduce that. And if we do need to put one of those positions in, we want to find an area where we can eliminate a position if possible.
So one quick question. You've mentioned a couple of times that these positions are not in the budget. And
Correct.
in order for you to fund these positions, you're going to have to make cuts because you're already at 3.95%.
Correct.
So,
Correct. So, right.
so in other words, somewhere in your budget, you're going to be able to find $861,000.
No. No.
I see $861,000 as the total cost for these new positions.
No. Those are requests. I'm not saying they're new positions.
Okay.
Those are positions that have been requested by our administrators. So we're going through those. I think I mentioned already today, there was a meeting that took place where we've eliminated about $300,000 of that list. And there are more meetings that take place. But I just want to be transparent, say, this is what our administrators have asked for. But if you compile that with, we're still looking at enrollment. So we may have reductions in enrollment, definitely at the high school level, and we're looking at elementary school. But we wait, I don't want to cut positions or put them in the budget, say they're cut when we may need them. So we want to wait a little bit longer. But that's what we've been doing. I know Mr. LeBlanc always asks about enrollment figures, right? Every year we've done that, and we do look at it. I think you had requested some information that we'll probably have tomorrow, and we'll share with everybody. I think it was like a 10-year projection. But that leads to a whole nother conversation because, whether we have 1,600 students in our high school or 1,400, we still need to run a lot of the same, like the service, some of the same services. And it depends with those kids, right? But that's what we did last week. And we're going to be completing that this week, the end of this week and early next week, is looking at course enrollment and where can we reduce courses, and make some tough decisions. Like we've decided we want to run AP classes if we have like 10 students in them. We don't want to reduce. But if we have less than 10 students, or if we have a few kids in an honors class, can we eliminate that honors course, that section, and put those kids in AP? And those are the type of conversations we have. A couple of years ago, and I think we had very vocal audience, but we eliminated French because we didn't have a lot of students going into it. We ran it a year, I think, longer than we wanted to, but we wanted to be fair to students, and we ended up making that decision, and yeah, there was, I think between French 2 and 3 and maybe 4, there might've been 30 students, but we felt we couldn't run, those 3 courses. So we make tough decisions on case by case basis.
Quick question. Mr. Levis, the maintenance funding requirement is not included in your budget.
Correct.
So I believe it was last fiscal year when maintenance wasn't paid, we actually lost the housing aid.
Correct.
So the housing aid, since your maintenance funding requirement isn't included in your budget, where is the housing aid right now? Because are we looking at a $1.3 million hole, or are we looking at like a $1.8 million hole right now?
So,
because if you don't fund your maintenance and we don't fund your maintenance, isn't the town going to lose that 500,000?
Correct. But that was, yes.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that the council's aware of
But
that.
I like I said, I don't come here. I never come here as a victim, but I'm saying is our hands were tied. You know what I'm saying? I don't have an option, and this wasn't my decision. We've discussed it with the school committee. I'm the hired help, but we had these conversations publicly, and I'm willing. That's why I said I think it's important for us to move forward, to have a real open and honest dialogue between the council and the school committee and administration about this whole facility piece, because I'll talk a little bit. We're going to give our priorities. And I know I saw some emails go back and forth about investing $500,000 in a roof at a middle school. And we say, well, if you're going to build a new middle school, why would we do it? But we're not building a new middle school. We don't have a plan to do anything with the middle school. So, I think we should have a meeting just on facilities and not make it part of your meeting or our meeting. Just have a separate meeting where we could sit there and talk about these issues, because they need to be addressed. And like I said, we we had a plan, and that plan didn't come to fruition. And so this is the situation we're in now. Like I said, this year we're going to make it happen. And we're going to use some of our ESSER funds to do that. We said, but that ESSER money goes away. And so, and let's be honest, this maintenance requirement is just going to meet the requirement that RIDE is put in. The whole idea for this was so you maintain your buildings, right? The leverage on communities, on school departments to maintain the building. Our buildings are in state of disrepair. I mean, there wasn't a day in the winter this year where we didn't have kids and teachers cold in our buildings. Even though we're investing money in it, the life expectancy is gone beyond. So while we're saying we have to meet this requirement, that's what the state says. And if not, they'll take the housing. But again, remember, that housing money is going to go away. Some of those bonds are going to go away at some point, right? It's not going to be there forever. So then what happens? So, they'll just, any potential money we get down the road, they'll just put in an account. So.
Mr. Shockley?
I'm wondering if someone has looked into or could look into these maintenance funds. Do they have to be spent every year, or could they be set aside in certain years? And I only wonder that because I don't want to throw away a couple $1 million a year when perhaps we could save some and spend it on something that would actually be a big ticket item and be something that would fix something instead of putting a Band-Aid on it.
I think the way the law is written, though, is it has to be spent on.
Correct.
So I don't see, because that's the whole point. They want us to do this. We're in a tough situation because we received, and I know the town we received $200,000 in capital over 12 years, right? At least the far back I could go. $200,000 was allocated by a council to the school department. So, I know sometimes people say, well, everybody's in this situation. We're the only ones that lost where the housing aid was scooped from the town. So I do think we're kind of an anomaly where, but I mean, we can look into that. But that's not the way the law is written.
I assumed
I'm
that
not a
it didn't
lawyer.
work that way, but I just wanted to see if we restricted the funds specifically for capital, if that fell within.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely, there's no harm in asking. So. So on this slide, again, we're talking about looking at student data. And that's a lot of work. Patty Martin, who was our data person, has been doing a lot of work with Mr. Murphy, just to make sure that the systems we have to capture our students. It's been hard this year because students don't have to be free and reduced. They don't have to fill out the paperwork. And so the fact that they're going back and going to look at 2020, it's still concerning to us because there's no incentive for people. We sent out paperwork. There's no incentive for families to fill it out if they're going to get free meals, right? In the past, there was an incentive. So that's something we're still working with the Department of Ed. It isn't just Coventry. This concerns RIASBO, the school business officers. Organization is working on that. But we know we've had issues in the past with our systems. So we've really cleaned those systems up. So at least the data we have should be very accurate. So, we continue to work with special education monitoring. One of the issues we've had is some of our personnel, we've had to contract out. And if you contract out, say with a psychologist or a speech and language, it can be $95 an hour. And we're trying to really make sure that we can look at, increasing our staffing where needed to actually reduce costs. We also, there's a formula about looking at reimbursements for high cost special education. There has to be a threshold. I think it's like students that cost more than $67,000. And so it's a process where we need to make sure we're capturing every single service. That's something that we've been working on to make sure. So we look at every single student. And if they're over the threshold, we submit them to the Department of Ed and we get a reimbursement. And the other part is looking at Medicaid reimbursement. We use a company called CompuClaim. And they're supposed to look at all of our students and make sure we're maximizing, any medically medical services for students that are eligible for Medicaid, which are typically students that have IEPs. So we still, again, part of it is getting families to consent. Once a year, they have to consent that we can bill Medicaid and submit. It doesn't impact their services whatsoever. But sometimes there's concern. Families feel there's information out there, or they feel like if they sign off, then we're not able, they're going to lose services. That's not true. But we also have to look at each case and really maximize that. And so we're looking at working with a consultant, maybe taking that in-house and doing our own and maximizing the reimbursement rate, because it could be potential, depending on the kids, of maybe $300,000-$400,000 in a district like Coventry that we're not capturing. And right now we're relying on a company to do that. And in my experiences, when we did it ourselves in a much smaller district, we were able to go from like 65% of capturing benefits to about 80%. So that would be significant for Coventry. Again, looking at CT programs in trying to tuition in students. And in all honesty, what we've tried to do in the last couple of years is just not lose students, right? Try to keep students in our community. I think that program that I mentioned before for our computer science is going to be very, being the only one in the state to have that program can be very helpful to us. One of the things we're looking at is our transition program. Right now, our transition program, students 18 to 21 or 22, they're located in our high school, but they're really not students. They're adults young adults that are eligible for special education services. So we've been looking at different sites that are community-based, that are in bus lines, where we feel that, and our students have been looking at them with our staff. Our special education director, Mr. Sands, has been involved. We're trying to find a place where they can have their own space. They're mostly community-based. If I go in the program in the high school during the day, often I don't see them because they're out on different work sites, some supported. But we really believe this is an opportunity for us to tuition in students. A lot of the smaller communities don't have a transition program. They use some of the collaboratives, but we feel that this will be an opportunity for us. So we're just trying to find a space. We had a couple of spaces, but they didn't work out. And then I talked about ESSER funds. One of the issues we're having, and it has to do with cash, because it's reimbursement, is vans. We had approval from the school committee to buy 5 vans, but we don't have the funds to do that because we get reimbursed. But we believe those vans conservatively will save us a minimum of $200,000 a year on our transportation costs when we use our statewide or other district transportation. And that's conservative, because we have to provide students transportation. Like I said, if a student moves to a foster family in Providence but wants to continue in Coventry, we have to provide them transportation. Right now, we had a student that cost us $6,000 a month because they're the only student. We were paying for a bus for the entire month, $6,000. So we think there's significant savings there, but we need the funds to be able to do that. So we negotiate full contracts with all of our bargaining units during the pandemic. I think we were the only district in the state to do that. I think it was in 2020. We were actually, and again, I know it's come up in different conversations, but we actually were able to increase the cost of our healthcare to our employees, change the benefit, the plan design that hadn't been changed. Anybody that's been in contract negotiations knows. We also got $500,000 back because we needed that with the previous council. We needed those funds for the budget. And so I think I'm comfortable as the superintendent with what we did with the contract. We know we have 1 year left on the contract. So I'm sure the union will be sending us a letter sometime in FY23 about starting negotiations, and we'll obviously get the council involved with that. I talked before about reviewing all staffing course loads in terms of our staffing. Principals, again, we're meeting with the principals as we speak. A meeting took place today where we were able to eliminate $300,000 of those requests, but they've been working both with Mrs. Anzalone and Mr. Cowart, Mr. Sands and Mr. DeVerna. It's ongoing. We looked at all of our software in all of our equipment costs. Again, we've discussed how we've used ESSER funds to pull funds out of what would be in our local appropriations. And I mentioned this before about purchase service agreements. This is where we use all these support staff to provide services, but at a cost. They're at a premium in nursing. And that's why we put those 2 nurses on this year, because it's a lot less expensive to have our own nurses covered than to bring in nurses on a daily rate from an agency. This is a slide I shared before. But I think it's important because if you look at the increase that we've had over the last couple of years, recognizing that last year we had a 3.3% increase. But if you look at inflation and who knows what inflation is going to be this year? What is it last one? Like 7.06%. But the school department averaged 1.09% from 2010 to FY22. So I think we are the largest department. We're always going to take a large share of the funds. I think that's true in any district, any community. But I think if you look at what the inflation rate was and what our increase was, I think it's hard to say that we haven't been fiscally responsible. And I know that's a broad statement because there could be years where maybe someone could make a point that we could have done more. So this is, we talked about learning loss and about, what, I know Mr. Marchand had mentioned about, articulating to the community what they get for their dollars, right? What do they get in terms of, what can they expect? What are they going to receive from their tax dollars for schools? What are they going to receive for tax dollars for DPW, the library? And I think, we're all aware of, even if you're not an educator, you've heard a lot about learning loss. And this shows about how we use strategically our ESSER funds in terms of curriculum. We also had a grant that we received for $500,000 from the Department of Ed for pre-K in secondary. But it shows by using curriculum, ESSER funds for curriculum in terms of EL, which is our English language arts curriculum, and also ZERN, which is a math intervention, I believe, right? Curriculum. And so at our elementary school, if you see winter of 2020, which is when the pandemic hit, and you see the dip in winter of 2021, and then you see the winter of 2022, that while we're not exactly there, we've definitely closed that gap. And I think what's crucial is on the side there, we identify students that are at risk. And if you look at 85% of our reading students are not at risk. 90% of our math students are not at risk, which is interesting because in most communities, that's inverted, right? Typically, they do better in reading than math. So we still have ways to go. We're still implementing the curriculum. We don't have ZERN implemented in every elementary classroom, but what we're doing is working. And we're behind in that curriculum cycle implementation with the middle and the high school. So we expect to see the same results in terms of closing the gap. It's been years. Like I said, people work hard. There's nothing against our educators and administrators and how hard they work, but we haven't given them the tools. And so we've taken advantage of our ESSER funds, of grants that we're able to write with the Department of Ed, competitive grants, and put it to good use. And I think that's important to know because there are districts where the slope isn't, it would be a slope that's angling down to the right. So I think that's important to know. It's a key takeaway. We had a conversation with the school committee at a recent meeting about this, and it's encouraging that, despite what's gone on in our lives the last couple of years. We've continued with the curriculum work. We've continued with implementation. We've continued with professional development, and we're seeing results. So I think that's important for the council to know and the community to know. And then I'm coming to the end here. I put in our priority list. We submitted our 5-year capital, but we wanted to highlight, with our new facilities, director of facilities and transportation, Mr. Russ Hill, who was previously facilities director in South Kingston. He went through our capital list, met with Mr. Martin, met with our facilities, our maintenance, and came up with this list that we presented, to the school committee that we've submitted. We've done a lot of work in the well, but at Western, but the bottom line is we need a new well. I didn't know that the tank was iron, right? And so when they went in and recently we had, we had an issue with the pump or something, but, it was pretty evident that, the work that we've done, maybe, it still didn't clear up the water, and I admit I wouldn't drink that water either, even though it's tested and it's fine. So we have a quote of about $70,000 for a new well for a steel tank. So I think it has to be a priority. When DEM came, I don't know if you're aware, but DEM came out, cited us at Tioga, and we were able to get the sewer tie-in at Tioga this right before school started. But DEM also said, well, anywhere else where we can tie into the sewers, that we need to take that action. The high school, I believe, is the only other school that we have that can tie in. My understanding is those sewers were private lines at one point, but now the town owns those sewer lines. So we have an estimate of $200,000. And if you've been to the high school, it's got a huge leach field. There's a pump house where everything is it's just a disaster waiting to happen. We had somebody come out recently to look at it.
Just a point of clarification.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that statement is accurate. I don't believe we own the line that the high school is on.
I believe it's been turned over.
No. There was a discussion on it, but it was never fully purchased by the town, to my knowledge.
Okay. Well, that's not what we were told, but I will get clarification on that. Sure.
Ludwig has a question
Sure.
for you.
I just want a clarification on the list itself. So for example, let's just hypothetically say the 1.3 from maintenance of effort was baked into the budget somehow. Are these the things that would be addressed or? Okay.
Yes.
So these are the
Yes.
things that aren't currently being addressed,
Correct.
but would be your top priority items.
Right. This
for
covers
those.
the
Okay.
maintenance requirement.
Okay.
Right.
Got it.
These are, the priority. Like I said, we presented them to the school committee, and this is what we submitted as our priority. For years we just put a list together, honestly, because there was no consideration of capital. It only became when we recognized, and this is my recollection, but when we recognized how the capital request impacted the impact fees. Right. And so we were downplaying because, through the Jacobs report, and then the Colliers had cut it down to maybe 30 some odd million. But we never put that together. So this is the first couple of years now where we've actually, put in a large sum of money across the 5 years.
And I don't know if this might be for Director Mills or not, but if we use ARPA funds, for example, towards like a school maintenance item, does that not count towards the maintenance of effort amount? So for example, the town's been allotted 10 million or so in ARPA funds. I know we haven't received it all, but I'm just asking if we were to say, request some of those funds to pay for the well, would that be counted in the 1.3 that we have to do for the maintenance of effort for the school, or do we have to completely do that separate?
So to answer your question, for starters, everything that's on this list would have to get approved by the SBA, the school building authority, before we even proceed. Once that's approved, I don't see any reason why the ARPA funds would taint this, as far as,
Sorry, say that again.
so what I'm saying is I don't see from I believe the question you're asking is, could we use ARPA funds to fund this?
Yeah, I'm
And
just wondering if there's,
The question is, will it become part of the maintenance of effort that the town has?
we have to spend 1.3.
Thereafter.
So-
If we were to spend ARPA funds, does
So
that
it's-
count towards the 1.3 million or no?
it could, but it's then we still have the problem that the maintenance of effort is not baked into the budget,
I
so to
think
speak.
we're using two words interchangeably. I think we're saying maintenance of effort, but we mean building maintenance. Minimum maintenance requirement. They're two different things,
Okay, sorry.
but it is
Well-
confusing because
Well, I think as confusing as it is important to distinguish whether if you used an extra $1 million of ARPA funds to go as an appropriation to the school, is that something the state would then require you to maintain that level of funding the next year without ARPA funds? So you do want to make sure we get it right in that, yes, we can pay for the maintenance requirement to meet the requirement, but the way the state law is written is it's 3% of the school's total budget, not just the town's appropriation, but the appropriation of the town plus the state aid for the total 77 million, 75 million, whatever that is. 3% of that needs to go. And the state law assumes that that 3% is baked in to their current appropriations for last year, for this year, for next year. And the state does not see it as a requirement for the town to fund an additional let's say it's just additional $1 million. If we give them additional $1 million, that 3% goes up by $30,000. So it's compounding and a little tricky in that sense that 3% of the total school budget is for maintaining the building.
so if
So
we
my
pay for,
question-
yeah.
One
Think
person
about-
at a time. Okay. Ms. Ludwig, continue, please.
I understand there's a bigger picture, but my specific question is there a possibility to use any type of funding, forget about ARPA, any kind of funding we want anywhere in the town of Coventry that we find it, ARPA, et cetera, towards that 3%? And it sounds like the answer is as long as we spend the 1.3, regardless of where the funds come from, that would meet the minimum, right?
Correct. And I think what Mr. Marchand was trying to articulate is so if we're using that one, whatever type of fund it is, ARPA funds, whatever funds we use, that 1.4 is going to be deemed appropriation. It's going to be in their revenue budget next year. And then next year, the additional 3% is going to be on that as well. So that's how that works.
So if you remember, and I believe you were here, Ms. Mills, when we came to the committee, the council before looking for support due to COVID, and we had a request of, I think it was $900,000. We wrote to the commissioner and because the concern was, would that become part of maintenance of effort, right? Because there's precedent that's been set where they've been able to put it aside and say it's not part of maintenance of effort. But that was a moot point because there was, it was changed to, well, we'll give it to you, but if you get money, we want you to pay it back, right? So we didn't go that route, but we did reach out to the commissioner. I know I spoke to the deputy commissioner, wrote, and they have allowed to not include those type of funds for maintenance requirement. I know I have a document that said that, but again, we didn't go forward with that. So there is a process to ask RIDE to not include it if there's an agreement between the schools and the town. So
this sounds like a discussion that needs a little more conversation with the appropriate people.
Yeah.
Okay. Members of the council, any other questions? Mrs. Lima?
Just out of curiosity, any of these items related to accreditation needs? I remember that was brought up as a conversation during our bond stuff.
So, yeah. So, I mean, and I think Ms. Shockley had asked me, the answer is that we had a plan. So when we did the ask, we talked about and we shared with them the bond process, the necessity of school construction. They wanted to see we have a plan. The fact of the matter is I can't come up with a plan in a year. So we don't have a plan right now to do major, like the gymnasium was important. We are addressing the HVAC, but the gymnasium was the important piece. So we don't have a plan. I can't come up with a plan because we'd have to hire an architect. And by the way, we still may be on the hook for that $150,000 grant that we received to do the necessity of school construction, right? So that hasn't been determined yet. And when we have our joint meeting, we can talk more about that. But I've spoken to NEASC. I'm going to put together a document and send it to them, what transpired, where we're at. And I think they're going to give us an extension, but for how long, right? So, but that's why it's not included in this budget, because I don't have a plan. We need to hire an architect, come up with a plan. You know, it's not that simple of just saying we're going to replace the floor. They've got to look at that whole interior. You know, when we had people come out, there's even issues. There's glass. I don't know if you see, there's some glass there. They were concerned. So it's much more comprehensive than me just getting a quote and putting it in the budget. So I think we'll be okay this year, but we'll have to address it.
So are any of these related to keeping accreditation or no?
Well, it's only the high school, right?
Okay.
So the sewer was because of DM.
Yep.
So the only place we have accreditation is at the high school, the NEASC accreditation.
Mr. Levis, I thought it had to do with the gym floor. That's what needed to be fixed for accreditation.
The gym floor and the gymnasium, like the bleachers,
Right.
They're not, you know, there's one section, if you notice, they don't use because it's,
But that's not on this list here.
no, I didn't put accreditation on the list because we don't have a plan. I, as superintendent, can't go to Mr. Hill and say, all right, the bond didn't go forward to the public. Now I need you to create a plan because we're concerned about NEASC. I can't, that takes time, money, resources. And like I said, I think we need to resolve other things moving forward. And I have reached out to NEASC. I have to follow up with a written documentation. But I believe based on our efforts, you know, because they've seen what we've done from when they had our visit, and we were in the process of the necessity of school construction. So it's not addressed in our capital plan, but we will have to address it at some point. We are addressing the HVAC, which was a big issue in the ESC also. All right. So I just highlight, I know the performance audit isn't finalized. I wanted to talk about, because I think the purpose of you doing the performance audit was in terms of part of it, the budget. So some of the comments that they made, and they made this publicly, we look at teacher and support related salary data on a regular basis, but definitely when we do contract negotiations, right? So we bring that to the table, we look at that. So we do look at that. It's part of our process. We also get data on an annual basis. Rhode Island Association of School Committees requests data. It's really for teachers, and it's about when contracts, anytime a contract's approved. We have a policy, Dr. Dickson and Mr. Pearson, we've met over 130 times of our policy subcommittee, which is which is the most important role of the school committee, one of the most important in terms of governance. But this is a policy that we worked with our new Director of Human Resources, Mrs. Card, and we looked at salaries of all of our administrators, within the state. And this is a policy, and the link is a live link, where we look at this policy on an annual basis. So it's brought back to the policy subcommittee. We look at the salaries. If we feel that we need to move a salary, it gives a range. So I'm very comfortable. I think it's probably one of the best policies. Again, I'm biased, but probably one of the best policies in the state, because it forces us to look at salaries to make sure we're competitive. But and when we look at it annually, there's salaries we increase, and there's other salaries where we don't touch it, right? So, but I think that was a recommendation. I just want to state publicly that this is something that we do. We've put in place, and I'm very comfortable with that practice. I know the school committee can speak on that. I highlight here, they talk about other policy development. Well, we're in a great position, right? We have a policy subcommittee where we invite the experts in to write policy. So we did a lot of revising and actually consolidation of our financial policies a couple of years ago when Ms. Mandrelli first came on. But if there's other recommendations that come out of that, we're in a position where we can look at that. I am concerned about when they talk about the town and the school, because I think there's different regulations, laws that we operate under. And I think that's something that we probably need more clarification, because, you know, the charter may drive certain things, but we have Title 16, which is state law. And so we just have to make sure that, you know, when we can have the school department's attorney and Mr. D'Agostino, Mr. Gorham look at that. But we're in a great position to do policy work as a school department. And one of the recommendations, the software, I think we're both in agreement. I can't speak for the town, but we're struggling. You know, the company's been working with us. But as superintendent, my concern is, you know, I know our people are working hard. I know the town's working hard, but with the financial software. But the fact of the matter is, if I owned a business and I know that I promised a product and people were struggling with that, I would put the resources necessary to address that. And again, just my opinion as superintendent, and I'm not the financial expert on either side, but I feel like they haven't allocated those resources. So we're more than willing to get into dialogue. And I know Ms. Mills has identified a few programs. And so I think that's something that, you know, we definitely want to support. You know, but we're still trying to make it work. We still struggle getting certain data. So that's a problem. And I already mentioned about the joint meeting, but I think it's important. Again, you know, there's been a lot of things said publicly. And my feeling is there's also been a lot of behind the scenes discussions. And I feel like we need to come together and publicly get to some resolution so we can move forward, right? You know, we're still talking about the fund balance. I know there's some agreement, but it's been 2 months. You know, we hired a brand new deputy director of finance in the first few weeks, just spending all the time trying to, you know, put us in a position where we can counter some statements that were made. You know, if we're truly going to be transparent and moving forward, I think that's something we have to come to the table and let's address this publicly and move forward, right? Because we have to work together. I'm concerned about the budget. If we don't work together in this budget, you know, it'll be a challenge passing the budget. You saw how much effort was put last year. You know, it was Mr. Marchand. I think you came in how many months before the budget? 2 months, right? And yet, the budget had failed 3 times. And look at all the effort that was put into it by different people. And it passed, but by a small margin, right? So, you know, again, I'm just one voice here, but, you know, in my role as superintendent, I feel like if we're going to be transparent, let's be transparent. Let's move forward. And we need to do that. So that's a recommendation. I've already talked about that. And I'm proud of the next statements. I'll be honest with you, you know, and I know as leaders and as the you know, individuals running, you know, the school department with the support of the school committee and just my interaction with teachers and administrators, it's been a horrific 2 years. And this year, I think, was the worst because none of us were expecting this. You know, I know I've been like weaving and bobbing and trying to avoid the COVID as much as I could. And then, you know, I'm at work one day and then 2:30 in the afternoon, I just get hit like a ton of bricks and I'm still struggling. And I mean, I say my brain is more off than it normally is. And normally I'm a challenge. I know that. But I was expecting people to really, this is an opportunity. I've been part of surveys before. This is an opportunity to really, you know, vent in frustration. And when we saw that 80, again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but 80 some odd percent say it's a good place to work. And 80 some odd percent said it's a good place to have a career. And over 51% of our employees live in town. They're taxpayers. I think that's important, you know, because I can tell you, I battle every day with people, and you know, I know that doesn't sound well, maybe, but I think trying to do the right thing, right, trying to keep kids in school and keep staff in school when maybe some people say they don't want to be in school, and I get it, but I have a responsibility to do. So I'm really proud about that. Again, if you remember this whole process, right, we thought we were going to do our own performance audit. And we've been on board. And I know publicly, there's nothing I've said but positives, especially about Mr. Pennington. I might have gotten off track a little bit, but Mr. Pearson got me back on in a meeting and said, hey, we got to go forward and give it our best effort. And I believe we have. And so I think that's important. And then to highlight the curriculum development and special ed programs. A lot of times special education, and it's dear to my heart, both have, individuals that I'm very close to that have disabilities. And I was a special ed director for many years. And I've always gotten frustrated when students that have no choice in the matter, right? They're born a certain way, but a lot of times headlines will read, special education costs out of control. And it's making these individuals a problem. And if anything, they're a gift, right? And so I'm very proud that our special ed department and the work that, our curriculum, Mr. Cowart and Ms. Anzalone have done, but that was highlighted because, it talks about, since I've been on board and maybe before, we've had an all kids and all students agenda. And I think that came out loud and clear. So I look forward. We've made some comments. I need to submit them to Mr. Pennington. I don't know if the town has submitted them. I was giving people a little extra time, but I wanted to review them to make sure that the tone was appropriate. So, at the end of the day, I think that it was, I felt good about it, and we're willing to work with the council, with the school committee in the town on the areas that we can improve. We can talk about consolidation. We can talk about joint purchasing. Like I said, we look forward to it. So while we might have been, I might have been kicking and screaming a little bit in the beginning, I think that it's, I think he did a very objective and fair job, and we'll see what the final report says. All right.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Levis. Mrs. Patino, since this is a joint meeting, I'd like to ask you to canvass your members of your committee to see if they have any questions about the budget before we continue on with the school committee.
Thank you, Madam President. I guess we can start with Mrs. Colonian. Anything?
I don't have anything at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Pearson.
Just a quick question, because I haven't seen the council's packet. In the presentation, you highlight, our top 5 capital improvement projects that we've prioritized. Have you also provided the council with the full capital improvement 5-year plan that we voted on?
I don't know if I shared it directly with the council, but it should be. You don't have it? I think we sent it to the planning board.
Okay.
I think we did planning.
But I'll make sure we get it.
It'd be good for visibility to understand. It's not just those 5 projects we've highlighted. We have a 5-year plan with multiple projects highlighted. So it's not, throwing money out the window. These are important improvement projects to our facilities. And as we know in this town, facilities have been neglected for decades. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. I don't have anything either.
Okay.
Thank you.
Members of the council, questions for the superintendent or for any members of his staff? Mr. LeBlanc.
On the school budget, the draft budget dated February 17th, and it has the multiple columns, starts with the 2021 actuals unaudited. There's a line called other in revenues. And for 2021, it's 415,000. And then for FY22 approved budget, it goes all the way down to $20,500. Do we know what the actual is currently for 2022 on that line item?
The actual 2022.
You don't know what it is? Okay. Yeah, I would just
Get back to you on that one.
I would appreciate knowing what actuals is on that, and then what is actually in that line. It's just called other. It's just a 400K decrease. So I was just wondering, maybe we could increase that in the budget.
Yeah, let's go back. Mr. Blank, I'll get all that information for you.
Okay. I think we should certainly look into that line. And then in the school budget draft prelim budget, it's dated January 27th. There wasn't page numbers, but it starts with GL account number 51110, regular salaries. and it lists a certain dollar amount, and it says retirements 6, additions 6, and then it says new hires, and there's $166,000 in that new hires. What's the head count associated with that 166? Okay, so it's 6 retirements, 6 additions, and then 6 new hires as well? Okay, and then what type of new hires? Is it teachers or?
That was part of the custodial.
Custodial, okay. And those are full-time positions at 165?
I don't think all of them were full-time.
Okay,
I think 2 were part-time and 4 were full-time, I believe.
okay. And then the flip side, the benefits are included in the benefits line for those 6 new? Okay, that's all I have at this time.
Okay, Mrs. Lima, questions?
None at this time. I do appreciate Mr. Pearson's point about the full list. So a good idea, and I'll appreciate looking at that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll send it right now.
Mrs. Shockley?
I guess more of a comment, just a concern. Let's just say this year we're able to pay $1.3 million in the maintenance costs from ARPA funds.
Mm-hmm.
We're still stuck with what do we do next year? What do we do the year after? And I want to just make sure that we have a plan for that. Because while I think it kind of goes to Ms. Ludwig's comment, perhaps, but I believe this year the money could be found, perhaps, if that's what the council agreed on. I'm just concerned about what we're going to do ongoing.
So, yeah, and let me just say, when we have this joint meeting, I will propose there's a way that we can utilize those funds and get a return that can now also be added to as part of maintenance requirement. When we first went to the SBA, it was myself, Ms. Mangiarelli, and Mr. Martin several years ago. One of the things they were sharing with us is just trying to, if we could come up with $1 million of capital, right? And how by spending that $1 million and then receiving, say it's 50%. So now we have $500,000 we get back. We invest that, then we get $250,000. Then we invest that with the housing aid piece. So there's a way for us to take $1 million and to turn it into a significant amount of money by reinvesting it. We'll talk, I plan on talking about that. We've surveyed the communities in terms of, especially if we're using our own funds, but we're in a position here that none of us created, right? To say that I have a long-term plan right now, I mean, I don't. I have some strategies and ideas, and I think, we also have to demonstrate all the things that the schools have done to try to save money, like our virtual net metering, like our, going out to bid, like how we use the ESSER funds to reduce expenditures so that $400,000 that we're saving on Chromebooks now will be saved next year. If we can get those 5 vans, we think we can save conservatively $200,000. But I think when we first did the numbers, we're looking at maybe $300,000 or $400,000. But I don't want to say that. We'd rather be conservative. So there's other things we can do to reduce our budget so that we can put more towards capital. But again, we have not had $200,000, right? Like most districts I go to have a capital fund and they have projects and they prioritize. We have nothing, right? So I just want to say that I want to be part of the solution. I don't want to be part of the problem, but this is where we're at right now. By all means, we have to try to figure out a strategy moving forward.
Right. And I agree. I think that we have to start having a capital budget included in our annual budgets, even though we're able to use this outside funding this year. If we use outside funding, but still don't allocate any funds towards capital this year, we're going to just dig ourselves into a bigger hole for next year. And I think that's what you're saying too. Please keep in mind as we go through these discussions, I use these schools. I know where everyone's coming from on this. And I know that we were given a mandate without any money behind it. Kind of typical.
Right.
So I think that's an important part of the discussion that we are able to have. Don't just focus on a possible bond, but also focus on how we can start putting away these annual funds. Even if we can't get to 1.3 million immediately, we have to get to a place where at some point we're there. And thank you for the discussion tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Ludwig?
Thank you. So I think we've referenced having some sort of discussion specifically about the maintenance funding. So is that something that we can agree to have a follow-up session on?
Yeah, I think you had requested that. I remember one of your first meetings.
I request a lot of meetings.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying, no, but I'm saying I specifically remember in a conversation we're having
that would
where
be,
you requested just to focus on maintenance.
Yeah, I think that would be great because I think we probably still have a lot of questions like about whether you can use ARPA towards this. And, I think we need to possibly come into that session with a few ideas and questions that we can figure out how to address this. I did want to mention that I only found out about the Western school drinking water thing when I saw a Facebook post. Maybe this is 2 months ago or so. But I agree with you that, a drinking water issue, I mean, it's absolutely imperative that we address something like that. I am open to talking about if we need to, looking at some type of ARPA funding or something like that, or whatever plan we come up with. I did notice that in some of the comments that came into the ARPA survey that the town did, there were people that I can't remember if they mentioned the well specifically or school infrastructure. So I think I would be representing my district well for trying to help find an issue there for Western. The one thing that, and then just switching topics, the one thing that I'm just having a little bit of trouble with the budget in general. I'll give you an example. If somebody in my district said, Jen, what's the increase for? I think I'll just give you an example. Like on the town side, there's some things that we're asking to do with that increase in budget. Or salary related items, or I could give a bit more of a story. How should we think about the story on this side? Like not just the maintenance funding, but is the increase just to meet our contractual obligations, costs of goods going up? Like, are there new programs we're instituting? Like what can I tell people that we need to pay this higher rate for?
I think we stated, so we put in positions last year. I think we said that we put in nursing and custodial staff because they had been cut like 12 years ago. And we need to focus on sanitation. And so that's a component that we kept them. They were paid for out of ESSER funds, and we put them into the budget, right? We're also maintaining the level of services. So as you know, the largest part of our budget is personnel, right? And that's the same for any school department. So we can create, and I think that was my point here, is we're not done with it yet. Like we're still refining and we're hoping to reduce it. But I think at the end of the day, and I think that's what I was trying to say, what Ben has said was, to try to market it as what people are getting. So we can talk about as a whole, it's a little bit more creative with us because we're using a lot of our other funds to make those value added, such as the curriculum materials, such as the Chromebooks. But we can talk about, the interventionists that we put in last year, the budget. So we're trying to maintain, because every year, I mean, we've just been cutting. We've been in a position the last few years where we're eliminating services in sports. And this community is tired of that. I mean, I'm telling you, I have people come to me and say they're just tired of fighting. They're tired of being a community where things are cut all the time. They pay enough taxes, right? And so we're trying to say we're going to maintain the level and explore opportunities. We're adding, girls lacrosse. We're going to look at other areas where people have asked for different clubs. So it may not sound like much, but for us, as superintendent, to say we're going to try to maintain the level of services and not to remember that we're in an inflationary period that's, we haven't seen in years. So to me, that's important because people are concerned because we continuously cut. And I'm not saying cutting where we have enrollment numbers, but we've cut, like I said, sports, activities, clubs. We're fortunate it was a pandemic, but those were all in the chopping block, if you remember. I think you all, many of you were running or considering running when we did that. But we can create, when we're pushing the budget and we can refine and highlight all those areas. But for us, it truly is about maintaining level of services. We're always cutting, we're always cutting. I was at a school district today doing an accreditation visit. And I got to tell you, it was painful because they're going to go out for a $200 million bond and their schools are, I remember repair, their high school is 1968. But to see a presentation again of what it's going to look like, we said we needed a win. For us, a win is to maintain levels of services. It may not be this big ticket, but it's important. Level of service for us have the appropriate staff to service all kids, having those interventionists, those reading specialists, those math, having those extracurricular activities, being able to fund a bus after school because students don't have transportation. They can't access after school activities because not everybody has transportation. So, I think it's sad in one regards that we're focusing on just maintaining level of services, but I think we're showing that we're providing quality services. We want to be the best still. We want to pursue, we want our high school to be recognized as one of the best in the state,
I mean, that's the message that we went with last year to maintain services. This is the number. So I don't necessarily.
I saw that, the performance audit, there's a lot of recommendations for the town, right? But in fact, but I mean, that's good. They're going to, but it costs money. But for us, we want to promote, we have an image issue, I think, in Coventry when it comes to budget. And we want to, that's why in my own way, I'm kind of pleading with the council that we need to meet to bury some things so we can move forward, so we can truly work together and promote that we can support your needs. You can support our needs collectively, but we are, maintaining level of service for us is the increases that we put on last year using different funds.
Yeah. And if that's what it is, that's what it is. So I think what I'm kind of asking about is how do we get on the same page for kind of the story as we go along here? So I've taken a couple notes as we've been talking. Because I think as we go out into the community and we actually ask for something, it'd be good to be on the same page so that we can, have a similar story. Whether I talk to somebody or Kathy talks to somebody in our district, they should probably hear somewhat similar answers on what we're asking for. Okay, I'm all set.
Sands, you have a statement?
Yes, Ms. Dickson, Dr. Dickson, Mr. LeBlanc. I do have the numbers there. There were ransomware insurance, which is $357. There was also a donation for sports for $23,000. And then there was also the gate, which is $20,000 is what we're looking at from sports. And that's the $20,500 going forward.
That's for FY 2021?
Yep.
Do you happen to have maybe the year before that as well? Or what current year other income is?
The current income is going to be $20,500. We're looking at that just being Sportsgate.
So the $20,500 was the budget, though. I was just wondering what the actuals were.
Oh, the actuals for that?
For 2022.
I haven't looked at that.
Okay, if you
I'll
could,
get that.
I would appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. I have two or three comments. First of all, according to our budget schedule, Mr. Marchand will have to be making a recommendation to the council for the appropriation for the school in town on April 4th, and that's just 2 weeks away. Mm-hmm. And you've indicated that work has to be done between now and then. So tell us more about what's going to happen so that Mr. Marchand will have the appropriate figures to deal with or manage when he comes to us with a recommendation. Because it's only 2 weeks away.
Right. That's why I said that the budget that's been approved, we have a meeting Thursday night, a school committee meeting. And so if we can refine numbers and get down, we can present to the school committee to vote, being just completely transparent that we feel that it's still too early to say that we're going to reduce, X number of elementary classrooms, right? We still have an ongoing enrollment, especially in the kindergarten area, because most of our enrollment, we just opened enrollment. So, the budget, that all I can say is, and I explained to you the different things we're doing. If we can get funds, and that's another conversation, but if we can get funds that we believe is our funds, we could use those funds to purchase the 5 vans, which we're not incorporating that in the budget for next year. We'd like to, but we can't because we don't have those vehicles. So there's a lot of work that we still have to do. So like right now, what we're requesting is 3.95. If we are able to reduce it and get the school committee to vote on a different number, we will do that Thursday night. But I don't want to, I'm trying to telegraph the work that we have to do, but to give you a concrete number, our commitment is, and we do this every year, we're trying to reduce. In the past, we've had to live with the answer. So we've asked for amount of money, part of the process, we ask for amount of money, then we're told this is what we're going to get. You know what I mean? Like we go through the motions and we're just told this is what we're going to get. And I got to say, based on my experience this year, I struggle with that because I feel like there's still things we need to resolve. So, I come here tonight not even knowing. People say what to expect. I have no idea what to expect, honestly, tonight, right? I'm being completely frank because I feel like, I have a job to do. I have to advocate, for our school community, the community that you all live in. But again, there's still a lot of unresolved in my eyes. And I think it matters only because I'm the superintendent. There's a lot of unresolved issues that need to take place or be addressed so we can move forward. I know I didn't answer your question directly, but I very rarely probably answer questions directly. So I'm just staying true to myself. Right now it's 3.95. We have more work to do. We'll try to get work done by Thursday night. April 4th is Monday, right? So
it's in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. I don't know what day it is.
So now my second comment has to do with a subject that's been brought up by Mr. Shockley, Ms. Ludwig, et cetera. And this has to do with if the town were to provide money for your minimum maintenance requirements.
Right.
I'm not sure how that would actually work. So that needs to be a discussion point, because if we were to give you the money and it were added to your appropriation, unless you made cuts, you'd be over 4%. And if it were not added to your appropriation, I'm not sure that the state would reimburse us and give us the state housing aid. So all these questions are in my mind logistically and how that would even work. So
I don't have, I think I have an answer, but I'm not a lawyer and I'm not Department of Ed. So I will get confirmation. What I shared with you is the process we went. And I know right. Dr. Dickson, you and I talked a lot about it back, whenever that was, about when we had a meeting with the Auditor General. We went through the process. If there's been comments about deficit spending. We know what we need to do if we deficit spend, or if we think we're going to deficit spend. We have to notify, we have to meet with the Auditor General, which we did. I think even Ms. Mills was on one of those calls. And that's where that whole $900,000 I spoke to the commissioner's liaison, the deputy commissioner. We spoke to Mark Dunham, who's works for RIDE in the finance. And so there is a procedure where we can request that an amount of money doesn't get added. It doesn't become part of the maintenance of effort. So there is a process where we can do that. We had to justify what we were looking for, the need. So, again, I can't tell you what RIDE would say, but the commissioner has the right to approve that.
But we would still want to be able to get a housing aid. So that would be a significant amount of money for us to come back.
I agree. So there's questions. So,
I understand that there are questions. I just raise it again because it has been addressed by people here. And I have another question, and that is this. The public doesn't want to see the status quo in its schools. They've said that loud and clear many, many years. They want to see improvements. They want to see value for their money, whether it's in town services or school services. And when I look through the budget, I was thinking to myself, when I opened it up, what's going to be the story that we're going to give to the public Ms. Ludwig raised that question. What's the story? So when I look through the budget, we have 210 pages of salaries, and then we have some money on programs, but there's no way to put all this together. For example, I can't really say that the automotive program is putting out value or what have you, because I don't know the number of people enrolled. I don't know the total cost for the automotive program. And I just pick out automotive because the salaries are separated from the program costs and the operating costs. So, I think it behooves the school to try to show what kinds of evaluations are being done of these programs, whether it's special ed or any of the AP programs or the career pathway programs. What are the evaluations that are being done? What are the assessments being done so that we're able to go to the public and I'll use the word sell or market this budget, whether it's a town budget or whether it's a school budget. Right now, there's not enough data here in this book that we have been presented that allows us to tell a story. And so I know we talked about having a consistent message, but I'm not even sure what that message would be, even if we agreed that, what the message is. I'm not sure what it is because there's no value here right now.
So, right, because you have a budget, right? You have our budget based on UCOA. And I think Ms. Ludwig,
Yes.
The way Ms. Ludwig phrased it, I agree that's work that we can do. I mean, I can tell you just anecdotal information, like our computer program at one point we had in the teens, and now we have to hire we've hired additional individuals. The same with automotive, we've had to increase it. The same with our criminal justice program, right? We're busting at the seam. So that's information. But, I'm going to tell you, the people that go out of district, when they go and I ask people why they want to go to Poneganta and things like that. So I'm not disagreeing with you, but I find that there's a bigger narrative in Coventry, right? The battles and budgets, the cuts. People are tired. The people that I speak to, I'm not, walking the streets and talking to people maybe that you're talking to, but facilities come up. I get complaints because people are cold. I mean, it's the same story every year. I pay a lot of taxes. Why haven't we invested in things like that? And, the other part too is we have people that go to certain schools, the way the laws are, we're challenging it. I'm working with the ACLU. 10 years ago, I thought I'd never work with the ACLU. Working with the ACLU to challenge some of the ride, way that, we have school choice for anybody that wants a career tech program. But, if you have a disability and you think Poneganta has a better special ed program, you can't go to Poneganta. You have to work with your district. If you're in a Title I school and you feel that, Lincoln provides better services for students through Title I, students that are socioeconomically challenged, you have to work with Coventry. If you're an English language learner and you feel that, Pawtucket has a much better dual language program or South Kingston, you have to work with Coventry. So there's opportunities here where we have students that go to parochial schools and those families are concerned. They don't want to send their kids to big, bad. This is what people have said. I'm paraphrasing here. They don't want to go to big, bad Coventry. So they go to Poneganta where it's small class size and smaller. So there's things that, we're up against other narratives out there that are challenging. And like I said, not for nothing, but we've spent 2 months, right? Our finance department, 2 months dealing with things that I believe we shouldn't have even had to deal with. So I hear what you're saying, but, like I said, I try to walk in other people's shoes, but walk in our shoes sometimes, we're fighting survival. I'm trying to keep morale up. We're through a pandemic.
No, I understand.
And you can see that through the performance audit that you chose, that things are pretty good in terms of, despite everything, we have a pretty good culture, and that translates down to students. I think if you come into our high school, so we're up against a lot of different challenging situations. And I think the first thing is if we can truly unify and support, because will this be another year where we present and we talk and then boom, we're given a number like 2.9%, right? And it's like, something's got to give at some point. That's why I shared that slide again, whether you like it or not. The fact that we've received 1.09% over 12 years should answer some of your questions, right? We've been doing what we can do. I said to our new facilities guy, Mr. Martin did a phenomenal job keeping things going, but shame on us. shame on us for just patching and saying this is as good as we can do, right?
Well,
Shame on us. So
I understand that part of the story is facilities.
it's a big part of the
No,
story,
well,
Dr. Dickson.
Okay. A big part of the story is facilities, but some part of the story has to be academics because people want to know, how is our school performing?
Correct.
And
So we shared data tonight, right? Just a little snippet, but there's things that there's work that we're doing. We've been doing so much professional development during the pandemic. So we outperform Pontiac, right? They've had millions of dollars. They've had reinvestment. We outperform them, right? I just want you to understand when you lay off 300 and some odd people, how that impacts the culture, how that impacts individuals, right? So these are things that we've done as a community. We've battled as a community, and it has an impact. We can talk about our performance. We can talk about our career tech. You guys have been celebrating people, not just athletics. We have Skills USA champions, right? We have a Gold Key art champion. We're going to have cybersecurity champions, right? Students that came in first and second in Rhode Island teams. So there's a lot of good that we're going on, not just locally, but statewide, regionally. So there's a lot of positives. But we always get dragged into the negative. And like I said, if I'm a little frustrated about wasting our time for 2 months, I look forward to that joint meeting where we can truly clear the air and move forward. So,
Well, we've always been willing to engage in a dialogue, and I don't think we've ever refused to do that. So we're willing to engage in a dialogue and as quickly as possible. So I think that's very important. But I'm just saying that the total picture, I won't say a small part or a big part or what have you, but the total picture is not only the facilities, but it's also the academic. And we need to put together that total story together, not only to get the vote through the town council, but it's the voters out there who are going to go to the polls.
And I'm glad you said that. I agree. We have to sell it to the voters, right? We have a responsibility. But I'm not using these facilities as an excuse. I'm saying it's a problem. But our teachers show up every day. Our administrators show up every day in our current conditions. So,
Well understood. Thank you. Are there any other comments from members of the school committee? Mr. LeBlanc.
Quick question for you, Mr. Levis.
Sure.
Is this the third year of the teacher contract?
Next year is the third year.
Correct. The budget that we're discussing.
Correct. Yeah.
Because one thing I always remember hearing was that there was no way that the town could afford both maintenance and the teacher contract for the third year. So based off of what I'm seeing, this is my opinion, the way that we are affording the third year is by taking out the maintenance and kind of punting that. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and Mr. LeBlanc, I'm glad
Sure.
you brought that up because our teachers are getting 2.5% for the last year, correct? And we fully negotiate a lot of changes. My understanding is you just approved a contract for a year and gave 2.5%, right? So I'm thinking if we're going to, to me, and like I said, I think that we did a great job negotiating with our teachers, and there was concerns. We never said, we agreed to have certain components in the contract, but I remember saying the concern, I don't remember the conversation. I could be wrong. Again, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I remember the conversation. The concern is, could we afford the contract in the third year?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there was a correlation between the contract and the maintenance requirement, but, I just think that, the state has addressed the pensions of the teacher's contract. I know there's still, discussion, concern about the SRP pension. But there are other pensions in the town that need to be addressed. And I feel like, like I said, the state addressed ours. I think we bargained in good faith, spent a lot of time negotiating, and, the contract was approved by the council and the school committee. I know it was a previous council, but, I feel like just the fact that we have the largest body of employees, right? We have almost 800 employees, not all full-time, but I don't know how many are on the town side. So I think just in nature, but, right now teacher contracts are being negotiated much higher. So I think, the fact is with inflation, we're at 2.5%. And I understand the concern, but it's also the reality of the current times we're living in. So I understand your point, but I feel that, we've worked hard with our teachers. I think they've done a great job during the pandemic. I'm comfortable where we're at.
I appreciate that insight. One thing for a future discussion on the school budget that I would at least appreciate having three important key performance indicators. One, obviously, I've been asking year after year, the enrollment, which I know Mr. DeVerna did provide, so I appreciate that. But one thing, two other things I would like to see is the total local, state, and other revenue appropriation for those same 10 years, and then also a breakout by the number of employees. It could be teachers, could be additional certified professional employees, non-professionals, and then additional staff for those years. I think those three key performance indicators would be important to kind of review the budget in total. So if you could put that together, I would appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. Any other comments by members of the school committee?
Go ahead.
I have a question. I have a question about why we need 10 years of historical data to work on a budget.
3 could be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Oh, Ms. Ludwig?
So I just want to make sure I understand what the meeting is that we were talking about previously, because we talked about some sort of maintenance meeting, and then now we look at the calendar. We only have like a week and a half before, officially we have to have a budget presented. And then, Mr. Levis, you've made mention to, you've made mention to a couple things that I don't know if the public is aware of. I think I'm understanding what you're talking about, because it sounded like you were saying something about you weren't sure what you were spending your time on the last 2 months on some of the requests. I take that to mean that when the council asked in December for transparency, like monthly reports and things that are actually outlined as necessities for the school side, that somehow is related to our request to do that. Is that your interpretation?
No, it's not my interpretation.
And I do hear a lot of side conversations over here, President Dickson, that it's very hard to focus on Mr. Levis.
So first of all, I agreed with you about the maintenance requirement, but my request with Dr. Dickson originally was we wanted to talk about, there was conversations, dialogue back and forth. Dr. Dickson had sent 4 points that she'd like the school committee. So it was to discuss the where we stand with the school bond, necessity of school construction. There was an email, right, that you had received from one of the former, I believe it was you, from the former building committee members.
About steps forward?
About steps forward, right. And so I feel like we need to have that conversation, right? The other part that I was referring to, though, was that there's a lot of conversation. Part of the performance audit talks about the finance departments and everybody being new and moving forward. And I feel like we need to have a conversation about that publicly. So you want to refer to December. I'm going to refer back to December 13th town council meeting. Right. So there was conversation.
Your specific comment was that you feel that you wasted the last 2 months.
No, I feel like our finance people have wasted 2 months.
Well, just so that the public is aware, I don't feel that the last 2 months were wasted. We've been advocating on behalf of transparency. You talked about that a little bit earlier today. We want to be transparent with the public. It's not just a request from the council for monthly reports, but having an idea of where the budget is at, having an open discussion. I think that would be great for us to have in some sort of open session. So if that needs to be separate from the maintenance of effort, that's totally fine. I'm open to that. We have requested that a little bit earlier in the year, or at least I did, and it sounded like we needed to have a few meetings to figure out fund balance and things like that before we felt comfortable sitting down. So I just want to be clear that, to me, the last 2 months were not a wasted effort, because there's still some clarity that I personally need to help people understand that.
And with all due respect, I think you're absolutely right. The public needs to understand it's on the agenda tonight. So I'd like to have a meeting to discuss it, because you're right. I've heard council members several times say you're repeating something for the public's benefit. There's a lot that's transpired. The last the public heard, I had a gentleman come up to me and talk to me about a memo that was shared publicly that indicated, things that were not going well on the school side. And I think that's the last the public has heard. That's it. Because there's never been any discourse publicly. And there's been meetings that have taken place for some clarification. But my feeling is if that was handled differently, we wouldn't have to be where we're at. And that's where the 2 months, because I have a gentleman here that going in, like Chris, we brought on, a certified public accountant to do work to help us move forward financially, because we've had one person where we used to have three people, and we know that we need assistance. I see that my finance director, and this is not criticism of him, but it's drowning because there's so much going on. And then the first several weeks are spent responding to information that I feel that, it should have been handled differently. But then, to be completely transparent, the conversation that took place on the 13th, I think was, my eyes completely inappropriate. Again, I'm just one person, kind of like the sky's falling on the school side when that's not the case. And so I feel that that's the last the public has heard. So I'd like to have a conversation because a lot has transpired since then.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
And that's all I'm saying.
I think on the 13th, several of us mentioned we'd like to have a session with the school committee to figure out kind of what is going on, what the right message is, because we only had a certain amount of information at that time. So I think we're saying the same thing, but our tone seems to be a little bit different on how we're addressing each other.
Yeah.
Now, last week at our town council meeting, I did give a president's update, and I did talk about the areas that we were resolving on the financial issues. Right. And I did give credit to the areas where there were improvements and where things still needed to be worked out a little bit more. But I think we did give the public an update on what had transpired over the last couple of months. So there was a lot of effort made to work with both sides in order to resolve some of these issues that had been raised in the December meeting. So I thought it was very worthwhile. It does take time. Some of these issues do take time. It takes a while to understand what people are saying, understand the terminology that is being used. But I think we made grand progress. Still more to go, but we made a lot of progress. So I don't feel that nothing has happened or nothing has changed.
Madam President?
Yes.
I have a member who would like to make a comment.
Excellent.
Okay, first, the value of our schools. If you come to our meetings, every single meeting has a segment where they show what's going on in the schools. That's first. Second, on the 13th, you called out myself and Miss Patnode for being members in the audience, but we couldn't attend your meeting. We were not qualified to talk to you about the finances without the finance director. So that is what this was all talked about. I'm going to say it because I got nothing to lose here. So that's the reason why he was saying that December 13th meeting, because that we felt it was inappropriate for you to call us out in public like that and then to not even apologize or say anything later on about, it was like the schools, they're in dire straits. You wouldn't believe the amount of phone calls I got because, what are you guys doing? Deficit spending. And that was not the case at all. So I just want to clear the air there because that has been really bothering us and it should not have been done. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Mrs. Kalunian. Appreciate that. Any other comments? Yes.
I believe that comment was directed towards me, so I'll respond quickly. If it felt disrespectful, then I'll apologize for that. What I would say is not only myself, but I've seen multiple emails from Anne reach out and ask about certain financial information from the school side. We've asked for monthly reports. We've asked for a number of pieces of information, reporting that should have been provided to the state and it had not been done. The information that I get from the town manager and the finance director is here, this is the information that we have. We're going to have to talk to the school about the rest of the information. And whether or not you feel qualified or not, I don't feel qualified. I just ran for election here. But now that I am in the seat, I feel very responsible for understanding the situation here, especially on $100 million budget between the two groups here. And so it was meant less as a disrespectful notion and more as, I don't know what to do here. I have only pieces of this information. I'm asking for additional information. It's not coming through. Now we have to have back and forth the last 2 months on fund balance and those types of things. At this point, I would love to get together and say, these are the outstanding items that I don't have enough information to make a decision on. And I think that's a transparency issue that I'm trying to help the public understand, because I get those questions as well. So I'm totally fine. I hope you can understand that I didn't mean that in a disrespectful way. It was shock on my behalf that there were so many, and I think there was actually several people on Zoom that were also attending, that I didn't understand why you're there at the Zoom or the in-person, but wouldn't be willing to speak with us. So that's where I was coming from. We don't have to go back there. I'm simply stating that I was in shock that we couldn't get together and talk about it, because I had this limited piece of information, and now I'm very worried. But now we can't get the answers, and now we have to do the back and forth. So I'm willing to wait for the answers on the back and forth. I think we should leave all of this to our professionals on the finance side. The finance directors are literally professionals at what they do, and I would love to see them come back to our group and have the discussion with us rather than having town council or school committee involved. I would love to see that as a next step if possible. But I do want to say I welcome the opportunity to have a follow-up session on both items, the maintenance, because I do believe we need to come up with some ideas on how to address that. And then secondly, whatever outstanding finance issues and et cetera, the monthly reporting or anything over the last 2 months, I'd be willing to have a session on that as well.
So there seem to be 3 agenda items. One, you wanted to talk about school design or school improvement plans, the finance issues, and also maintenance issue. So I think I got 3 issues, 3 agenda items for.
You mean the school facilities, right?
School facilities, yes. Thank you. Okay. All right. We're on agenda item F, public comment. We will have 2 public comment sessions. Is there any member of the public present this evening or on Zoom that would like to ask a question? Please raise your hand, be recognized, come to the podium, say your name and address, or be recognized and let in by the IT administrator. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak? I see none. Okay, is there anyone on Zoom? Would you like to raise your hand and ask a question during public comment? Okay, I see none, so we'll go on to Mrs. Patno. Would you please close your meeting?
Absolutely, Madam President. I would like a motion to close at 8:56.
Thank you. Make a motion to close the meeting at 8:56 for the school committee.
Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. Mr. Pearson?
Aye.
Mrs. Colonian?
Yes.
Mrs. Patino, yes. The ayes have it. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you for participating. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Good to see you, and I guess we'll be seeing you all soon, very soon. Thank you. We'll now move on to Agenda G, continuation of the work session of the town budget. This evening, we will discuss Board of Canvassers, legal counsel, and planning. Next week, on the 28th, we will discuss finance, DPW, public safety, and human resources. So we'll give a couple minutes for some members of the public who are leaving, and then we'll begin the continuation of the town budget.
Is that yours? I don't know. I'll grab it. Doesn't matter. I'll take it.
It wasn't a new phone. I don't know what it was. Those things, so.
That was the baby crying.
No.
Baby wants its grandpa.
Actually, send me some song or something.
Wants its
It sounded like a ringtone, like a hip hop ringtone.
Thank you.
Good night. Updated pictures for the cancers.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Marchand. We're going to continuation with the discussion of the town municipal budget. We have pages for updated building inspector and legal. Do you want to start with Board of Canvassers first because they've been so patient here?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Marcotte, Ms. Anderson, would you like to come and sit at the table here, please? Thank you. Mr. Marchand, what section in our book is the,
Yeah, page,
section 320?
section 320, page
Okay,
27.
thank you. Okay. Yes, Ms. Anderson, I did record that we received the annual budget from you on March 7th, 2022, correct?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay. So why don't you review for us what you sent to us, and that way the public will hear that budget too.
I didn't know what you were question of.
Well, just give us a review.
All right, well.
We just came through,
majority-
we came through a very heady session just now, so this will give us.
Trying to lighten it up.
Well,
Okay.
I don't know if we'll lighten it up, but it'll give us a chance.
Well,
Oh, do you? Okay. We will just relax a moment, not more than a moment, because this group is.
and if you like,
active.
I can give a quick intro,
Okay.
if that would help.
Are you going to lift them off the hook?
I'll let them off the hook a little bit.
Okay,
So I'll have to
excellent.
take the hard questions, but
Okay, all right.
So what I would just highlight is that the Board of Canvassers has requested to hire a new position that would begin halfway through the year. So it's not part-time, it's a full-time position, but not starting until January, because they are anticipating a future succession plan that would be happening in fall of 2023, or sorry, of 24. Fall of 24 during the next presidential election. And so in order to have capacity to run the presidential election in that year, which is the same year that Ms. Anderson hopes to retire,
25.
we'd be in a pretty pickle if we don't build in some additional work in that office. And so, and not to mention that being a lone person in an office as important as the Board of Canvassers running the elections for the town, this town is relatively understaffed, or at least staffed less than many other similar towns and cities. So I think that's a wise move to add that position. The rest of it, I will turn over to them, because their anticipation of special elections, special primaries, statewide primaries, general elections, they're much more familiar with the expenses in terms of the poll workers and the advertising and all that goes into that. But it's also a different kind of a budget because it's not the same every year. This year is an off year for elections, so their expenses go way down and then they go way up and every year is a little different. So we can't do that straight line budgeting that is easier for other departments. Thank you.
So could you just review for us the date for the election for the school committee, the date for the election for the budget, and how we're going to take into account any referendum that we may offer for the Charter Review Commission recommendations? So what would those dates be?
Okay, you got May 3rd will be your District 1 school committee election. It's already no primary, so we'll go right to the election.
And how many polling places?
We're gonna have two.
Two. Okay.
St. Francis and Summit Baptist Church will be our two of District 1. And
Nope, sorry.
Okay.
You're right, it's District 1 for some reason.
no, I want to go Maple Root and St. Francis, one on each side of the town. But the Board of Election recommended, because you're at the both end of the town, the people out in the western end, you know, the further out, have to come closer. So that's why we have it that way, the two polling places.
And what about the budget election, the
It was
referendum?
gonna be May 24th, right? Yeah, May 24th will be that one. That
Okay.
one, we do have 5 polling places, one in each district. Now, when you asked about how we have to hire poll workers, you have to have a minimum of 6 per state.
Mhm.
Yeah, per district. For a polling place, you have to have 6. 4 supervisors and a moderator and a clerk.
Okay, and with the charter review recommendations to the changes in the charter would be during the November election? Would it be a special election?
No, that's included right on the ballot.
Okay, on the ballot. Okay.
Yes, yes. You're asking that when they do the charter review
Yes.
and put them on the ballot? Yeah, that's gonna be with November's election.
Okay.
That
fine.
will be November. And those are September 13th for your primary, and then November 8th is for the general election.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Just
Okay.
one correction, the school budget, the budget referendum is May 26th.
Oh, the
the
24th is,
The financial
I'm
town meeting
sorry.
is on the 24th.
sorry. Had one of them.
Close.
But that's the way too, what I was saying about how we put our budget together, is how many elections we have and how many mandated for the polling places. So like we always, in the past, I've always scheduled a special election and a special primary, like what's happened this year. So it's in the budget, it's not a surprise. And in the past, like, Hillary's, that was a midterm election that we bowed out, and then we had to have the special election. So those are mostly put in there in case. Then we go to the statewide primary, the general election, and the numbers there tell you how many people, like, how many polling places. Statewide, we do 18 polling places. General election, we do 18 polling places. And sometimes they mandate a couple extra moderators for a bigger place. And now we've been on our way to possible larger polling places that we can have voters. So sometimes the state requires that we do an extra moderator to help flow the work. And then the financial town meeting all day referendum. We also, in the past, which we had the night you go to the high school and have, you people haven't experienced that, maybe Ann has, but it's Tuesday night at the high school where you meet and you present what your budget's gonna be, what you're gonna vote on that Thursday. We used to have people check people in because but there's no voting taking place, so it's not really required. But it was something we always did, so that's why that's in the budget. And then if there should be a town-wide referendum, just say the school committee wanted to have a new building put in place, that would be used as that too. So those are why we list those elections. Got all those? Right. Then travel is for going back and forth to the Board of Elections or the days that we do have elections that our board members travel to the polling places. And then, like I said, it goes to Secretary of State too. Advertising is $3,000 because this year we're gonna have to advertise a little more for the placement of my office and when we have all these different elections. So that is going up in price. Then for rental of polling places, we do pay our polling places. The private clubs, the churches, we don't pay the school department, we don't pay the senior center, but we do pay our polling places $250 an election, depending on how many we've got. Goes on that. Office supplies, that's another thing. Poll books. I don't know if the state's gonna mandate it this year, but in the past, we've had to have backup books. And that's the label books that you peel off and put on up. Because if for some reason the poll pads ever the system goes down, we need something to be able to pull right out and work. So that costs money too. That's like $1,200 per election when we have full elections. And our board members. And I did put in for myself for overtime because in 2020, if I didn't have my board members, I would have been here 24 hours a day to get through that amount of mail ballots and all. So I'm just thinking if it happens again this year that people put in for mail ballots. See, I have to put it through the system every single, and we did 7,000 voters came through here during the emergency period of 20 days, the day before, the day of November's election. There was 7,000 people came through here those 20 days. Yes.
So if you had funds, like for instance, you didn't spend overtime money this year, you had in your budget $2,500. If you don't end up spending it, and at least Ms. Mills probably knows this better, does that carry over? Because I'm concerned that maybe you don't have enough overtime built in this year.
Can you repeat the full question? I'm sorry.
No problem. So if they didn't spend their budget, probably I shouldn't line item it.
Okay.
So for instance, this year, she didn't spend overtime money. There wasn't an election. It wasn't necessary. Next year, she's once again allotted $2,500 to overtime, but in the year of the 2020 election, you spent $5,200 almost. So I just want to know if there was excess from this year's budget because of things that didn't occur, can they be utilized towards next year's?
So actually, I mentioned this in the department meeting that we had with Mr. Marchand and Miss Lori and Billy, that if the town council chooses, they can use any extra budget money that has not been spent for this particular department and make a resolution to put it in a special fund that can be drawn on in future years. So it doesn't make every budget go up, down, up, down, up, down. It's a lot better for budgeting purposes.
That would be great if you could level it.
Yes.
Well,
And not to get it, but we should probably do that with the snow plowing as well. I mean, there's certain funds that are really inconsistent on how to budget.
Normally, what used to happen, now that Lisa wants to start putting a reserve so that it doesn't happen every year. But my money, whatever wasn't used in my budget went back. But whatever money I didn't have, and we needed an election, you had to pay. You know, it's one of those give and take. And that's why she wants to start a new account of reserve.
Okay, Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure if this is for Ms. Anderson or maybe Lisa. When I look at the total payroll, it went up about 100% because of the additional clerk, but payroll tax went down by 25% or almost 25%. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
So this initial budget, we didn't put that 50,000 in there for the payroll benefits. So we weren't sure if you wanted to proceed with that. So if that full-time position, I would start 6 months into the budget. If that was something the town council would be interested in, we would put the benefits and the payroll taxes related to that.
But I guess where I'm confused is we added the 50K, but we didn't show the complete cost of that employee. That's my point. That's all.
Yes, because we're unsure how you wanted to do it.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. And then I did see.
It does show the complete cost. It's just bundled in the 50K instead of split out because we didn't change it yet.
Because per hour, it'd be 25,000 for a half a year for just salary.
For just salary. Oh,
Yes,
so you
and
baked
the
it
other-
into that one line item. is what you
It's
did.
in that one item, but
Okay.
it's just not broken out.
That's fair.
Because we didn't know for sure if you wanted.
Nope.
You're all over.
That makes a lot more sense to me.
Okay.
It just didn't from the other perspective. That's all. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mrs. Lima?
So I just wanted to make a comment and speak to the importance of adding that clerk position to, I guess, study under Lori. I think canvassing is one of those unique departments in elections in general where there's no program or degree or anything that teaches you how to be a director of elections. And with how important that office is to the function of democracy and government overall, I just want to point out that, even if I'm sure Lori stepped into that job, and I don't know that she probably had the opportunity to have someone groom her for that position. And, you're kind of left on your own, and there's so many state laws and deadlines and everything else that governs this position that you really don't fully understand unless you've been through an election yourself. So I can't emphasize enough how important having someone prepared to backfill when Lori does eventually retire goes. And if anyone was curious about the amount there for that position, we currently, I believe, I'm speaking with about 90% certainty, the lowest paid director of elections in the state of Rhode Island. So just wanted to throw that extra information out there. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question on page 2 of your budget. You have financial town meeting all-day referendum. There's still 5250 in that budget. And the town financial meeting, we're not having any votes of any type. So I'm wondering why that is still there, because the townwide referendum does have a budget item.
Because that's what I explained to you. It was always in there, but now that we have new administration, they can choose to take that out. It's not a necessity unless they want to control the amount of people that are coming into the meeting. See, we used to have people check in and you had to be a registered voter.
Right.
Is it still necessary to have them? Can anybody come in? Yeah, well, that's why I'm saying, and I haven't taken it out, it's still being worked. And I have to make a comment. For the 25,000 for our redistricting, it's not in this one, but I know I discussed it. It's in this, oh, okay, I'm sorry. This is my worksheet.
Okay,
It is in the spreadsheet for the 25,000 for redistricting. That we have to account for. Contract was for 10,000. It's not a contract and an engagement of services. And that one was for 10,000, and then we need 15,000 for mailers. You have to send out a postcard to every, after I redistricted that we're in the midst of right now.
mhm.
Are we paying for it this year, though? Is it the $25,000 in professional services? Okay.
Yes.
So it's factored into your budget, but this year's budget. Do we need any of it for next year?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm
That's what I
sorry.
thought.
So we have it in the the budget that we're working on right now, the FY '22. It's, did you get a copy of the budget?
No, I didn't get that. My worksheet, but I thought we had put it on here.
It's
So it
20,
should have been for 21, 22. Is this the 21, 22? Yeah, okay, it's in, so they'll get paid this year.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
It's not, but we're talking about the FY '23 budget.
Oh,
It's,
okay, I'm
we don't,
sorry.
it's okay. It's not for the FY '23.
I never had to do this before.
Okay, it's all right. We just,
Watching me.
So-
Billy's watching you.
all right. So to clarify for the town council, you do not need the 25,000 in FY '23.
Sorry, I don't
Okay.
need the 25,000.
okay. Any other questions? Okay,
One more comment.
yes.
Temporary help in office from July till December. That is carried over 22, 23. So that would cover half a year for me for if you didn't give a benefits, but that's only.
Are you referring to $13,552?
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
Got it?
Yes, got it. Okay, Mr. Marcotte, do you want to add any comments?
No, I have nothing else.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, nothing else?
You did great.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you were so patient waiting all evening.
Thank you.
It was entertaining.
It was entertaining. Good.
That's what we go for.
It was a barrel of laughs. Okay. Mr. Marchand, what's next for us?
We'll go to legal 410.
Okay.
Yes, you have a new sheet tonight. So essentially, we're budgeting the same, just slightly a little less, but for your benefit and transparency, what we were able to do is break out the total sum that was budgeted for the current year and the prior year and break it up between the different expenditure kind of lines under legal services. And I can just walk you through that. The town solicitor has been consistent at about 240,000. We increased it 2% to 244,800. We have legal expenses associated with the Coventry landfill. And so we're putting 10,000 towards that. If we overspend anything, we overspend it, but as from year to year, this is how we're tracking it. Labor attorney, Mr. Augusta, this will cover the 2 union negotiations we'll be dealing with and any other labor disputes that come up from time to time. The subcontracting services for 39,000, that went to the legal expenditures on WED that we explored on the wind turbine issue this last year. And I don't know if we'll need that again next year or not, but we have an amount there for that. Legal engineering services, this was a really small amount, and I'm not, if something comes up, I guess that's just what's in there. But the ones that I've seen come across have been associated with the sewer, and I just redirect those to the sewer fund if I can. but that's a very small amount. It might be our catch-all category if we have any engineering that needs to be done with regard to any other issue we have come up that we run through legal. The professional services on Johnson's Pond, this is where we funded the title search that was done last year. And then we have a reserve for claims, which is also hard to predict because we don't know how many insurance claims are going to be made. Oh, that's when someone's suing us and not an insurance claim. Thanks.
Any questions by members of the council on the legal department number 410?
No.
All set? Okay. Ms. Ludwig?
Sorry. So, just thinking back to last summer, and the number of times we had to go into court for Johnson's Pond. Do we feel like sorry, I have a cough drop because I'm losing my voice. Do you feel like this is truly sufficient for the likelihood of what we're going to face this year?
Based on the fact that the current year budget was July and August last summer, and we're kind of on track for year-to-date expenditures, I think we're fine. Legal is one of those hard things to budget for because you never know when you're going to have a big legal case or not. And it doesn't matter whether you budgeted for it or not because you're going to be paying them to defend you anyway. So you try to follow a year over year consistency, and hopefully it's enough. So that's the best we can do.
Okay.
Okay. Council, ready to move on to the next department?
All right,
Okay,
down to the planning tab, it's green.
Are we doing a building inspection, or is that just an extra?
That's part of the planning department.
Okay, good. It says it's 8:20.
Oh, so we'll start on page 55 of 75, the Department 940. This is the specific, the planning department. We have the director, the associate planner, special duties clerk, and our zoning clerk. We don't really have any changes for this budget. It's just year to year, mostly minor office expenses. Any questions on that one? The comprehensive plan is budgeted separately since that was allocated with prior year surplus COVID money. Department 941 is the Planning Commission. Again, no change. That's just the stipends they receive for service and some office supplies. Moving to the Zoning Board, 942. Same story as the Planning Commission. Uh, 943 is for the Conservation Commission, and I mentioned earlier that I'm looking forward to standing that commission up. And reaching out to the members of that committee, but we just have an amount for professional services in case they have anything they'd like to investigate. Yes.
One question I had throughout for boards and commissions that get a stipend, do we have a rule about, or like a general rule of practice about which commissions end up getting a stipend and which don't? I only ask because of how long this committee was dormant. So I don't know if it's a point where it's if it's just conservation commissions are always paid in every community, or the same thing, like I saw the Citizens Advisory Committee, we still budget for them to get a stipend, but I don't know that committee is even meeting or active.
It's inactive.
So just curious about what the general rule of thumb is on that.
So to answer your question, we're actually currently working on a project in finance the last 2 weeks to put together a schedule for all these boards and commissions and put them on a quarterly schedule. And then there are also boards and commissions that meet and people choose not to get paid. So I'm compiling that schedule right now to get some consistency, because upon doing the budget, I noticed, some people are not, some of the budgets are not coming through with any numbers because these people have elected not to get paid, and some only get paid with attendance. So I will finish up that project, and I will share it with the town council on how these members get paid. And some of them are based on attendance and some are just standard. But we're going to all put them on quarterly, and we'll write up those procedures.
I would think that all of the stipends were determined at some point by a resolution or something. So we could go back. One of the efforts that I worked with the town clerk on was just compiling the resolutions that are tied to each of the commissions so that we can go by the resolution to see what their mandates are, what their responsibilities are. So this will be part of that project. Uh, 944 is the Land Trust Commission. And I can kind of skim through that, and historic. We'll cover land trust first.
Just really quick, if I could. If you annualize the 7/1/21 through 12/31, it just comes to like $1,700, but we're still budgeting for $7,000, just to make things even. So can we actually save about $5,000 here?
I think the biggest issue on the land trust is when they go to purchase land and the advertising they have to do. And so if they're not buying anything, we could cut the advertising. But if you don't know when they're going to buy anything, then you have to start advertising. And if we don't budget for it, then we'll be spending it anyway. So we could overspend the budget, but then it's going to be a problem about where we're going to move it from.
Okay.
Could we take Ms. Mills' idea of holding maybe last year's in reserve and spending it down?
The only problem with this is this really small budget. I wouldn't really recommend that for a small budget. The canvassings where the fluctuation is, 60,000 one year to 194, and the same with snow plowing and CIP. I would strongly suggest reserves, but for something this small, probably not.
So with this one, we just delete last year's budget. We don't save it. And
It goes into the surplus.
$3,000 budget.
All right. Historic District Commission. This is the same being carried over. I didn't receive any requests, even though I am aware of some conversations about possible projects they'd like to take on, but I didn't receive anything to budget for.
Yeah. Can I go?
Oh, Ms. Ledwick?
So, just for everyone's awareness, so Manager Marchant and I spoke with the chairperson for Historical Preservation Commission and outlined a process for them to use these types of funds. And as we asked them, as we asked the Historical Preservation Commission to be stewards of the local town-owned properties, I think we probably need to consider bumping this up. So right now it says proposed 1,000. I'm assuming that's for like meeting minutes and things like that. But if we're going to ask them to be stewards of the local town properties, that should probably include like glass replacement or things that we know need to happen on some of the buildings.
So as far as stewardship, I'd really like them to be like the caretaker or security guard that just comes to let us know when glass is broken and needs to be replaced, and that will come out of the Public Works Facilities budget. They don't have to do the purchasing or
There are some other projects though. So for example, an item that we don't have to debate all of them tonight, but an item that's maybe not necessarily about the outside structure, but maybe something that they want to preserve, a tangible item on the inside, a special chair, the granite idea that they had. So those wouldn't necessarily be the upkeep, for example, on the outside of a building.
So if they want to have like a special projects budget where they were going to take $3,000 to refurbish furniture or something that's more of a historic restoration, or like you said, the pink granite, I think that's fine. It's just a question of how much do you think is an appropriate amount to budget, what their requests are, and how we're going to approve their request for expending those funds when the time comes. So we can certainly do that.
And they've also been asked for a budget. And if they would present this budget within the next 2 to 3 weeks, then we would have a better idea of what we needed to put in the budget. But just to pull a number out of the air when we don't have a request for a particular budget and we've asked for it, I don't see putting money in until they make their request.
All right, ready to move on? 820 permits and inspections. Okay, so this one has been updated. You should have a new sheet here for this one. We didn't catch the addition of the employee who lines up. If you start with a building official, we see that as a new full-time employee. It's offsetting the professional services line item where we were paying for this same person through a contract. So that, washes out. The other minor change you'll see is in inspectors, which we have 2 part-time inspectors. One does mechanical and plumbing, the other does electrical. And historically, those have not been on the same basis. They're both run through payroll, but one's treated like an external contractor and they don't have a fixed wage. They just get half of the permit fee, which is a very unusual way of compensating an employee. So what we propose to do is move them both to just an hourly rate of $40 an hour for their inspections, and we're budgeting for $48,000 for the 2 positions, and the permits will just be retained by the town as revenue. So that's a change there. And the rest is just adjusting for those changes in offices and their supplies and equipment. We're hoping to reduce mileage expenses for those employees. We have 2 new vehicles through the lease program that were due to be delivered in January, but they haven't even been scheduled for build yet. So that's hanging out there, but we do look forward to those savings in time. Any questions about the building and inspections office? I will say that I've had a conversation with Mr. Crossman and Mr. Phelps going back 6 months now, or maybe longer, where they first requested permission to add a new inspector position. This would be a site inspector that would go out and verify compliance for all the developers to make sure that they have their silt socks in place and that they're following the rules. And when they don't follow the rules, those fines can be $500 per incident. And they were convinced that if we hired a person to do that, it would the fines for compliance to keep the site safe and safe for the environment and safe for the public could pay for itself. But ultimately, they didn't put that in the budget because they've got enough on their plate, and they said they'd come back to that later.
I do worry about diminishing returns on that one, though, because once we have someone in place and the contractors know we have that person in place, they might start doing their job right. And then we're no longer paying for the person. So we probably want to have it budgeted for if we choose to put it in at any point. Like I said, just law of diminishing returns.
That can happen, definitely. However, it doesn't always work because police enforcement
would still be a positive. I'm just saying,
yes,
budget wise, we need to think about it.
Yeah. So, and that is the end of planning.
Okay, thank you so much. Moving on to agenda H, public comment. Is there any member of the public present this evening or on Zoom that would like to ask a question? Please raise your hand to be recognized. Come to the podium, say your name and address, or be recognized and led in by the IT administrator. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak? Okay, is there any member of the, is there any member on Zoom who would like to speak during public comment? Please raise your hand. I see none. All right, may I have a motion to adjourn meeting at 9:39?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call vote, Ms. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Shockley?
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Lima?
Yes.
Mrs. Dickson? Yes, 5 yeas, no nays, the motion passes. The council is adjourned at 9:39 PM. Thank you. What?